Chapter 81, The Little One versus Bloodsucker. The paralysis effect from the bloodsucker was slowly starting to wear off, and as it did, Ian lifted himself off the ground to have a look at just what was going on. In the center of the arena, the area was lit up by the small glow stone where Vorden was standing. But he wasn't just standing there on his own, he had multiple chairs that had been taken from the arena surrounding him. How was he able to use the ability so well already? Even I would struggle to do something like this if I was in top condition. Didn't he only copy my ability a while ago? As the bloodsucker lifted himself off the ground, he pulled the metal object that had been lodged into his shoulder and dropped it onto the floor. 20/25 HP. Rack. The bloodsucker snarled out. Its attention was now fully focused on what had caused him pain. Instead of going in straight for an attack and charging in though, the bloodsucker dug its claw into the wall and started to climb upwards. How are we meant to see him now? Said Vorden. It's too dark, and the beast can attack from anywhere. I have no time to play games, the little one said. He lifted his hands and started to crumble up each of the chairs and several metal spikes, all looming above his head. Then he waited. The beast jumped down from above, and as soon as the little one could hear and see him, he immediately repelled all the spikes in that direction. However, as the beast was falling through the air and the first spike came towards him, it spun around and grabbed the spike, throwing it back at incredible speed. But the little one had prepared for this too. He had already gathered a pile of chairs from the arena and mushed them together to form a shield. He placed this on the ground so he could easily pick it up when needed. As the spike came towards him, he lifted the shield, but what he didn't expect was the blow to be so powerful that the spike had managed to still penetrate the shield he created, which was at least 6 inches thick with metal chairs. Ha ha ha. Ratton started laughing. Looks like I really missed out on this one. Did you see how strong it was? I would have loved to deal with this guy. Vorden, you would have been killed within seconds. Although the beast was able to throw back one spear, while in the air he was unable to move. The other spears that were targeted had managed to penetrate him, going through his body and sticking him to the ceiling of the dome. 10/25 HP. The beast no longer caring for the damage that had been done to its own body, it lifted its legs up against the ceiling and pushed with all its strength, allowing the spikes to completely go through his body. However, the hole marks that could be seen in his body quickly healed up. Although it didn't add to the beast's health, it would still allow him to fight as if he had never been hurt. He landed in the arena stands and began hitting a few chairs as he landed. As soon as it stood up, it began to rush forward recklessly towards Vorden's direction. This thing, why isn't it dead yet? Vorden said. A few more chairs had been turned into metallic spikes, and he threw them towards the beast once again. This time the beast continued to run forward and moved out of the way of each spike. Its eyes were slowly adjusting to the light that had surrounded Vorden, and now it could see the spikes as it left his side. As soon as the spike left Vorden's side, the beast would react and move out of the way of each blow. Is it me, or did that thing just get faster? Vorden said. This is bad. The little one isn't at full strength. Ratton added. If only there were 2 more ability users nearby. The bloodsucker continued to move forward, avoiding each and every spike thrown at it. Then when it was close enough, it swung its claw out. The shield was raised, blocking the blow. But as the claw hit the shield, it was completely shattered, unable to be used again. Now, with no more metal surrounding the little one, the beast was able to freely attack. As it took a step forward, though, it felt something sharp pierce into its foot. As the beast looked down, it was another metal spike. It looked in the distance and noticed that Ian had managed to recover. He had his hand held out and had thrown the spike out into the beast's leg. 7/25 HP. Suddenly, though, tears started to fall from the little one's face. Now that the beast was close enough, the light from the stone shone and reviled the face and clothes of the beast. The beast in front of him was wearing the same uniform, and although it didn't look exactly like Quinn, it had similar qualities in its face. He didn't know what happened to make Quinn turn into a creature like this, but he could feel that the beast and Quinn was the same person. I've done it again. I have heard another one. The little one said. What are you doing? Ian shouted. Kill it. Ian then crumpled up another nearby chair and threw out another spike, this time aiming for the beast's head. It came flying through the sky and was on target to hit, but before it did, it stopped mid-air. No. The little one then moved its hand, throwing the spike to one side. Then using its other hand, it pulled the other spike out of its leg. The beast was now free to move around. It instantly looked at the last person who had hit him and immediately started to run towards Ian's direction. Ian was still under the effects of the paralysis when he had thrown the previous spike. When he threw the spike, he had originally aimed for the beast's head but missed. He still managed to luckily hit its foot though. Seeing the beast quickly running towards him as every second passed, he panicked and started to fling out chair after chair, but the bloodsucker was too powerful. It simply knocked them away with its hands, sending them flying through the air. Ian then pulled out his trusty dagger ready to attack, but when he looked in front of him, the beast had vanished from his view. The next second, he was staring up at the ceiling with his back on the floor. Then when he looked down at his body, his legs were now completely detached from himself, blood pouring from them. The bloodsucker then dragged the top half of Ian's body away into the hallway out of the arena, afraid that the other person might disturb its meal. Chapter 82, The Search for RA. The students had just been informed that the portal expedition that was meant to be going on today would be canceled. Although many people didn't know the reason why, they had a good guess that it might have had something with the 2 students who didn't arrive in class today. Students didn't just not turn up to class for no reason. The city was their whole life. The school was their whole life. For the next 2 years, everything you did there would decide your future. Layla had been planning to confront Peter on the situation, especially since he had been acting so strangely, but before she could even get to him, he had already run away. Come on, Aaron, let's go find out what he's hiding, Layla said, but as she took a few steps forward, she noticed that Aaron wasn't following her. Aaron, I have no need to get involved in your affairs. I don't really care what happened to the other 2. I hardly knew them before choosing to team up with them. Aaron replied, look at it this way, right? You said you wanted to create the strongest team in the class, yeah? You and Vord are clearly the strongest in this class, and if you want to outperform the others from the other classes, you're going to have to team up with each other. Our team has already registered, and I don't even know if they can find a replacement, so we might not even be allowed to take part in the expedition. After hearing Layla's last words, her eyes suddenly lit up. What did you say? Let's go find that rat. The two of them, now working together, started to look around the school to see if there were any signs of Peter anywhere, but the two were unable to find him. They knocked on his dorm room door a few times as well, but there was no answer. The dorm room doors each opened via a fingerprint sensor on the door handle. So even if Peter was in his room, the two of them wouldn't have been able to enter. They could have waited outside, but the longer they waited, the more Layla started to worry about Quinn. If he was unable to get blood, she knew firsthand what Quinn could do. As they continued to search for Peter, they still couldn't find him, but they did find a group of people who might have known where he was. It was Earl and his group of 5 other boys. Haven't I seen them hang around with Peter a few times at breakfast? The group were inside one of the training centers. This one in particular was filled with testing equipment that they used on new students and was also an area where students were able to practice on machines. If they had increased their ability level or obtained new skills, they could test themselves on the machines, write down the scores, and hand them to staff to upgrade the status on their wristwatch. If Layla was on her own, she would have never approached the group, but she had Aaron by her side. Hey guys, Layla said with a smile as she approached the group of boys. Before replying, Earl took a glance at her wristwatch and saw that she was only a level 2. What do you want? Earl replied. Layla's eyebrow started to twitch hearing Earl's rotten attitude and tone in his voice, but she was used to this. She had her fair share of bad treatment at her own school. We're not here looking for trouble, just wondering if you knew where Peter was, she said, putting on a fake smile. The group looked at each other and started to laugh. Looks like they really aren't his real friends. I knew something was going on, she thought. Peter, Earl said, I wouldn't be surprised if that kid tried running out of the city by now. Yeah, Earl, I can't believe he actually did it. If I did that, I know I'd never be able to live with myself. One of the men standing behind Earl said. Earl immediately turned his head and gave a scorned look at the man. Sorry, Earl, he said. Anyway, buzz off you two. We're not saying a single thing. If you want to find Peter, then go find him yourself. Although Layla was annoyed, there was nothing she could do. She wanted to stand her ground and beat the information out of them. But Earl was a level 4 user, while the rest behind him were similar level to herself. She had no choice but to turn and head back on her search for Peter. As she walked off, the group started to laugh, but as soon as she passed Aaron, she realized she wasn't following her once again. Where are you going? Aaron asked. To find Peter. These guys won't tell us anything. I see no reason for us to find Peter anymore, Aaron replied. What do you mean? Well, these people clearly by their conversation earlier either know what Peter did or at least also know where Vorden and Quinn are. Aaron then started to walk up to the group of 5. I don't want to waste any more time. Mist and frost started to form just above her hands, and suddenly, a fully formed ice spear had appeared. Before the other students could even react, she had already thrown the ice spear, hitting Earl on his shoulder and pinning him against one of the drums that were used to show a student's power. As Earl's body landed on the drum, the numbers started to rise until it eventually stopped at 20. The group watching this knew she was strong, but the machine had only confirmed their fears. The group had no intention of fighting back. After seeing Aaron Powers, they knew their place was under someone like her. However, she didn't care. She then placed both of her hands on the ground, and a trail of ice started to appear, traveling across the floor, eventually reaching the group's legs and freezing them all in place. Now, which one of you is going to tell me what I want to know first? Aaron said. Chapter 83, your choice. Layla, having witnessed the whole thing, was amazed. She knew Aaron's strength, especially after training with her and seeing her fight before, but it always seemed like whoever she went up against was no match for her. Although she had a power level of 5, she seemed to be much stronger than that. Layla had seen a couple of level 5 users before, but they weren't this skillful in using their abilities. Aaron then started to walk up to one of the students whose legs were frozen. It was a man who had let his tongue slip earlier, and Earl had given him a scolding. She placed her hand on his shoulder, and slowly the ice from his legs started to rise and cover his body. Wait, I'll tell you everything. I don't know where Peter is. He was meant to meet us here a while ago, but he never showed up. Why is Peter hiding? Layla asked. Don't tell them, Ben. Earl shouted, still stuck on the machine. If you do, you're out of the gang. Aaron then gathered another ice spear in her hand and threw it once again, this time aiming for Earl's leg. It seemed like she had thrown the spear with more force. As the spear stuck into his leg, Earl screamed in pain, and the numbers once again started to rise on the machine. This time the numbers went beyond 20 and rose up to 30. The commotion was starting to cause the attention of other students who were busy practicing away in the arena as well. 30? I've never got a number that high. Just how strong is she? But Layla knew this wasn't her full strength. At the test site, her strength alone had reached up to the number 50. She was still going easy on these students. Aaron then looked at Ben and started to form another spear. The next one goes in one of your holes, and I still need the one you're speaking from. Crazy was the only thought Ben had. Who cares if he was no longer a part of Earl's gang? As long as he worked hard in school, he could slowly move his way up the ladder. This was not worth the pain. Wait, please. Peter, we're not sure exactly what happened, but we heard he pushed Vorden into a portal. That's all we know. We don't know why Quinn is missing as well. Of course, Earl was the one who was behind everything. He and his group had given Peter the instructions to push Vorden into the portal. When they had heard the news that 2 students were missing and confirmed Vorden was one of them, though Peter had done what he asked. Unknown to them, Peter hadn't actually pushed Vorden, but Quinn instead. After hearing their answers, Aaron did as she said and walked away from the group. Wait, aren't you going to free us? Ben shouted. The ice will melt in a couple of hours, or maybe someone in the room with an ability can help you. That's your punishment for making me wait instead of telling this girl what she wanted straight away. As Aaron walked off, exiting out of the training center, Layla quickly followed behind her. Thanks for that. That wasn't for you. I just hate it when guys think they're better than us. Better show people like that their place. Although Layla didn't completely agree with Aaron's methods, she knew she wasn't the type to abuse her power to those who were weaker than her. But Layla had something else on her mind. Did Peter really push Vorden into the portal? And if Quinn was missing as well, did that mean he went in after them? She dreaded the thought that there was the chance that the two of them could have ended up on some unknown planet. Even worse, she feared that Quinn might have grown too hungry and had no choice but to dine in on his friend. Just then, though, as the two of them were about to exit through the doors, the door opened inward and a familiar face was seen. It was Peter. Immediately seeing Layla standing there, Peter went running off, but Aaron had reached out and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him back. She then slammed him up against the wall. Before he could even think about running away again, she placed her hands on his and started to freeze him. He was now held up in place on the wall. Seeing Peter here must have meant he was planning to meet up with Earl and the others, and judging by his strange actions, what they had said might have been true, but Layla needed to hear it from his own mouth. Peter, tell us the truth. Did you really push Vorden into the portal? She asked. What are you going to do, hit me? Peter replied. Because trust me, I've already had my fair share of pain. Whatever you plan to do to me, go ahead. I guarantee you, I've already experienced any pain you can think of. Aaron then started to form a small little needle-shaped ice pick in her hand. Really? I'm sure there are a few places I could stick this in which would leave you wishing you'd kill yourself. Layla then motioned for her to put the ice pick down and was starting to think Aaron had other problems. Peter, I thought they were your friends. You know, every day Quinn would ask about how you were to me. He told me that if I ever saw anything strange to come back to him, why didn't you just tell him, or even just tell us what was happening? You don't know. What would happen if I told you guys? You'd go beat them up, then what? They would just come back for revenge, but do you think they would go after you, Aaron or Vorden? No, of course not. They would go after me. So you say you can protect me, but for how long? Could you keep an eye on me 24 hours of the day, and then what happens when I leave this academy and you guys aren't there? My whole life has already been decided for me, even before I arrived here. Peter then started to break down into tears. I didn't want to do it. I didn't have a choice. Layla had clenched her fist and was ready to punch Peter in the face. She couldn't believe after all Quinn had done for Peter behind the scenes, and although she didn't like Vorden, she knew Vorden cared for him too. Seeing Peter's tearful face, she dropped her hand down to her side. You're not even worth hitting, Peter. You disgust me. She then turned and walked off and had one last word. You always have a choice. Chapter 84, Agent 83. Inside one of the meeting rooms located in the first-year building, a meeting had been called. Currently sitting at the head of the table was Nathan, and by his side was Faye, who had been in charge of the investigation of the missing two students. As they waited, several other teachers started to enter the room. Dell, who was Vorden and Quinn's homeroom teacher, Leo, who was the beast weapons teacher, and finally Haley, the school's doctor. Nathan didn't want word to spread out about what had happened since the first-year students were his responsibility. Therefore, he called his most trusted sergeant by his side to inform them of what his plans were. Faye, would you please inform the others of why they have been called here today? Nathan asked. Faye then stood up with a report held in her hand. As you have been made aware, 2 of our students have gone missing, and due to that, we have had to delay the first year's outing. However, if this was a simple missing persons case, we would not have called you all out here today. Faye then pressed a button on her controller, and a hologram appeared revealing a certain planet, and around it, there were 2 moons. The missing students seemed to have entered into a portal, but not just any portal, a red portal. The faces of the others started to drop as they heard the news. How or why we do not know, but one of the students was Vorden Blade, an original from a powerful family. The mission is not to bring him back alive, but to at least bring his body back. That way the family can say their goodbyes, and it should calm down their anger. What about the other student? Leo asked. The other student is not a priority. He goes by the name of Quinn Talen, a weak level 1 with no family and orphan. There is no need to worry about him. Do you know where the portal leads to? Haley asked. As you can see in the diagram, the red portal leads to an abandoned planet named Pioletic. It was one of the very first planets the human race had ever created a shelter on. It was safe for the most part, but as the place was filled with weak beasts. However, that was until a year had passed, and nightfall had come. Beasts stronger than we had ever seen before came and attacked the shelter. We had no choice but to abandon the place. Faye explained. This is why we have called you 4, Nathan said as he stood up. The 4 of you will head out through the red portal immediately. Don't worry, our latest reports say that the beasts that attacked the shelter have long since moved on. The place is mostly filled with Radiclaw scum and the odd intermediate beast here and there. Dell then slammed his fist onto the table. Why should we risk our lives for a couple of students who may have just jumped into the portal themselves? Would you like to be the one to go to the Blade family and explain to them why their son has died and gone missing? How even though we insisted on these watches, to keep track of where we still weren't able to keep an eye on them. Nathan said, this is an order, not a request. Meanwhile, Layla was still worrying over Quinn. Now that she knew he had most likely gone through a portal, her worries only started to double. Don't worry too much, Aaron said. If Vorden is with him, he will protect his friend. Of course, unless they went through a red portal, that is. But she was more worried that Vorden might be used as an emergency ration during the trip more than anything. Without any food or water supplies with them, perhaps Quinn would suck him dry. As they were walking through the hallway, they noticed that a group of students were gossiping, and as they walked past, they heard Vorden's name being mentioned. What did you say? Layla asked. Would you mind repeating that? The girl looked slightly nervous as Layla was directly in her face. We were just talking about the missing students. Dumbo here has the ability of super hearing and had heard in on the meeting saying that Vorden was stuck on a red portal planet. After hearing those words, Layla felt her blood pressure suddenly rise. Damn, maybe I shouldn't have jinxed it, said Aaron. Do you remember anything else? The name of the planet, if another student went with them? Aaron said, now shaking Dumbo, who was standing next to the female student. Yeah, they said the planet's name was Pioletic, and they said something about Quinn being there as well. Layla then got out of Dumbo's face and immediately started rushing towards her room. I'm sorry, Aaron. I gotta run somewhere. Thanks for all the help. I wonder what that was all about. With her 2 teammates stuck in another world and nothing else for Aaron to now do, she decided she would continue training while she waited for them to return. Layla had rushed off towards her dorm room as quick as she could after hearing about what planet they were on. As she entered the room, she locked the door behind her and placed a chair on the handle. Her roommate luckily wasn't in at the moment, which meant she was free to do what she had planned. She then bent down under her bed and pulled out a small little box. As she opened the box, a circular black sphere-shaped ball was inside. Already checked the room for any microphones, and there didn't seem to be any, said Layla. I guess the other families really did put pressure on them not to invade privacy so much. She then tapped the top of the sphere, and a clicking sound was heard. A white ring started to light up and went around in circles for a few seconds before it finally completely lit up. Agent 83. What seems to be the problem? A voice said from the ball. Is it to do with the mission? I've found someone who will be a great help to our cause. However, it appears he's stuck somewhere. Would you be able to check if there are any agents on a planet named Pioletic? Layla asked. Give me a few moments. I'm afraid all our agents have left that planet a while ago. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, that is it. Thank you, Layla said. Then may I wish you luck in your mission. May Pure be with you. May Pure be with you, Layla replied. Chapter 85 Turning Back. On planet Pioletic, it was still nighttime outside, and it still would be for another 6 months. The two moons shone brightly on the shelter, showing signs of a great battle that had once taken place. Inside the training center, in the dome-like building, a single boy was alone on his knees, tears running down his face. Was that really Quinn? Borden asked. What happened to him? He looked so ugly. Ratton said. Shut up. The little one screamed. The little one then immediately left the chair inside the darkroom, leaving it open for Vorden to take control once again. As he left the chair, he went into dark space and sat down on the floor. He held his hands over his knees and started rocking backwards and forwards. I did it again, he mumbled. I heard another one. Now that Vorden was back in control of the tears had suddenly stopped, Vorden lifted himself off the ground and started walking forward. You didn't know he will be like that for a while now, Ratton said. I know, but we have more serious problems to worry about. If that really is Quinn, what happened to him? And can we even help him turn back? Vorden then stopped walking forward as he had reached the torn-apart body on the floor in the stands. All that was left of Ian was his 2 legs that had been torn from the waist down. Well, at least you aren't the one that has to kill him anymore, Ratton said. He then continued to walk forward following the trail of blood. The beast had taken the top half of the body, which left a trail behind which made it easy to follow. Hey wait, check the man's trousers. He had that advanced tier beast crystal, don't you remember? Now that he's dead, we may as well take it. Although Vorden didn't like disrespecting the dead and didn't often agree with Ratton, in this case it made sense to not let such a precious thing go to waste. People's abilities only went so far. Apart from original abilities, the ones that were known to the public went up to 8. But even beyond the level 8, there was a power difference between them all, and the simple reason for that was beast crystals. The equipment that could be made from different beast crystals could heavily sway the favor of the fight to one person. It was the whole reason why the Pure group was such a threat to begin with, even though they chose not to use abilities. After searching Ian's trousers, though, there was no such luck, and no crystal was found. Do you really think it's a good idea to follow that thing? Ratton asked. I need to see if that thing was really Quinn. You know, if I don't, the little one will punish us. Vorden then looked around and held out his hand, attracting one of the chairs from the stands and held it in his hands. He held it in front of him like a shield as he walked forward. Like that's really going to do anything. Did you see the same monster as I did? Ratton complained. Why does he put an idiot like you in charge? The bloodsucker continued to drag Ian's body across the floor, looking for somewhere safe to eat its meal. It turned and turned several corridors until it finally arrived at what looked like resting quarters. As it approached one of the rooms, there was a metal door in front blocking it, and next to it was another access code machine. The beast looked at the door and kicked with all its strength, causing the door to go flying into the back of the room. The room was mostly empty, as it was only designed for temporary stay. The only thing that was in there was a single bed, a sink in the corner, and a desk. It then went to the back of the wall before sitting down. It continued to handle Ian's body like some type of rag doll, turning him around until he was in position. Then finally, it opened its mouth wide, revealing 2 of its large fangs, and bit into Ian's neck. 35 out of 100. 42/100. As the beast continued to suck Ian's blood, a notification screen appeared, slowly rising up until eventually the number had hit 100. 100/100. Sufficient blood has been consumed. Transformation will now end. Your mind is starting to stabilize. Just then, shooting pain once again started to enter Quinn's body, only this time, it was starting to revert back to normal. His claw-like hands began to shrink down and go back to shape to what they once were. His incredibly tight skin softened around his body and face. His ears were no longer pointed, and his teeth too returned to normal, and finally, the white in his eyes could be seen once again. As his body returned to normal, he started to huff and pant heavily. His whole body was sore, and his mind was ringing like crazy. Then images started to flash into his head, everything that he had done while he was the bloodsucker. Even though he had no control, he felt like he was there every step of the way. Vorden, what's he doing here? Then more images started to flash into his head, and finally, he remembered slicing a man in half. As he opened his eyes, and the ringing pain had stopped in his head, he looked in front of him. He could see a half-torn, eaten man, with 2 large puncture wounds on his neck. That was me. First human killed. High-level user detected. Reward. Instant level up. Although Quinn was still in shock that he had killed a human for the first time, he didn't have much time to think about it, as the system had hit him with multiple messages at once, and there were even more to come. Congratulations, you are now level 10. Evolution process has begun. Evolution process. Just then Quinn's heart started pounding harder than before. His veins all around his body started to show as the blood rushed through. Quinn could feel every little part of his body, but it wasn't a nice feeling. It felt like his blood was made of spikes, and as it went through and around his body, he could feel it tearing everything apart. Just then, a footstep was heard entering the room. Vorden had arrived. Quinn. Chapter 86, Evolution complete. The room looked like a prison cell brawl gone bad. Inside was the top half of Ian's body on the floor, blood still oozing from the bottom half, and his gut spilling out. If Vortin had never seen a scene like this before, it would cause a normal person to throw up all over the place. Then when he looked up, he could see Quinn kneeling on the floor in pain. It was as he thought. The creature that attacked him before was him. Although he no longer looked like the beast anymore, it was clear, the damaged uniform, the dead body on the floor. "Hey Quinn, are you alright? Is something wrong? Do you need anything?" Vortin asked. "Get away." Quinn groaned out as the pain continued to shoot through his whole body. "Maybe I can help." "I said get away." Quinn's voice sounded deep and dark, and as he lifted his head, Vortin could see his eyes were now glowing red. "Hey Vortin, I think you better listen to the kid. He could be turning into that thing again," Ratton said. But it was too late. Vortin had taken one step too many and was now within striking distance. Quinn lashed out, flinging his arm at Vortin. However, he was able to lift his metal chair up in time, blocking the attack, but it didn't do much. The metal chair was immediately ripped by Quinn's hands, and the attack managed to graze Vortin's chest, flinging him backwards. "Blood!" Quinn screamed. "Give me blood!" The smell coming of Vortin's chest was so sweet. "What did I tell you? That chair was useless," Ratton complained. "Quick, seal the door shut." Vortin no longer hesitated, and using his abilities, he pulled the broken door back in place, and using all his powers quickly sealed it up. Quinn was no longer chasing after Vortin, but instead knelt on the floor, crying in pain. Vortin stayed there with his hands held up, holding the door in place, fear that whatever was inside or whatever was happening to Quinn would come out again and attack him. The screams continued for a good 15 minutes until they eventually died down and stopped. "Quinn," Vortin called out, softly hoping not to startle him. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah," Quinn replied. "Just give me a few moments. I'll let you know when it's okay." The pain had finally stopped, and Quinn really did need a few minutes to get a hang of everything, for the system was revealing so much new information to him in one go. "Congratulations, evolution was successful. You are now a vampire. Level 10. Race, vampire. 0 out of 100 EXP. HP 60/60ths. Strength 15. Agility 15. Stamina 15. Charm 5. Blood family bonus 0. Just looking at his status screen alone, so much had changed. Quinn had yet to put his extra stat point, but it seemed like 2 more options were added to the stat screen. The first one being the charm stat, and the second being a blood family bonus. Although with no explanation, Quinn was clueless to what these 2 things did. But what he did understand was that he had gone from a halfling into a full-fledged vampire now. Quinn had expected this change might have happened as he continued to level up. He only hoped that it didn't happen so soon. For there was the worry, now that he was a vampire instead of a halfling, what happened when he stepped into the sun? However, there were even more messages to come from the system. Skill, blood ritual unlocked. 0 has members. New skill, daze. This skill has no cost and can be used on the opponent to stun them between 0.2 seconds and 0.5 seconds at a time. Must have direct eye contact with the opponent. The skill has a chance of failing, depending on the strength of the enemy and on the user's charm points. The more the skill is used on an opponent, the higher chance they have off resisting. 2 new skills have been unlocked, although there was no description at all for the first one, which just left Quinn confused. However, now he knew there was some use for the charm stat. But the messages didn't stop there. Shop has been unlocked. New tutorials have been unlocked. System level 2 will now activate. Just then, a screen had appeared in front of Quinn, and once again, it was the handsome blonde man he had seen the last time, the man who had taught him the hammer strike and the flash step. "Congrats," the man said. "You have now officially joined the family. I thought maybe a simple human wouldn't be able to make it this far, but it looks like my little experiment was a success. Now that the system has been upgraded to level 2, I had a good friend of mine install an AI system with my voice. It's amazing, right? Now you'll never feel alone again, and if you ever have a question about the system, just ask." "What?" Quinn thought. "Why wasn't the system like this from the beginning?" Now you're probably thinking, why didn't I design it this way from the very beginning? The truth is you needed to be able to get this far on your own. From your own mistakes along the way, they can only make you stronger. For some reason, Quinn felt the urge to punch the man if he ever met him in real life. Now before I leave you, although the AI system will help you answer any questions you have about the system, it is not able to go beyond that. So here are my final recorded words. I'm sorry, but now that you're a vampire, others will come looking for you. They have already blended into society, so it's almost impossible to tell who is one and who isn't. If you want to live a life of freedom as I did, then get stronger, create a force of your own, and fight back. Good luck, my friend. With that, the recorded message had ended and the screen had disappeared. Quinn had many questions he wanted to ask the man, but he knew it was impossible. With the new system upgrade and the shop unlocked, he wanted to check out all the new things, but as he looked at the dead body in front of him, reality had hit him. I'm really not human anymore, am I? Quinn wanted to get stronger to protect himself and others from the abuse of those above, but now he had just killed a man, but for some reason, he didn't feel sad about it. In fact, it felt like it was just something he needed to do to survive. Before Quinn was to check out all the new things the system had reviled, there was one more problem he needed to face, and it was on the other side of the door. It was time to confront Vortin. Chapter 88, A Voice Inside. While Vortin continued to search the arena for some type of secret exit, Quinn was pretending to look for one as well while walking around. Instead, he wanted to inspect the ability book he had received earlier from the metal container. As soon as he thought about his inventory, a screen appeared in front of him. Then when just thinking about the item, the system would come up with a message. Would you like to take out the Level 6 Shadow ability book? This time, rather than a monotone robotic voice the system usually played in his head, it was the annoying, energetic blonde man's voice. Inspect. Level 6 Shadow book can only be learnt by those that have been blooded. As Quinn used his inspect skill, a weird word had been added at the end. Blooded? Was that another name for vampires, perhaps? When Quinn tried the other ability books, he wasn't able to learn any of them. It started to make Quinn ask more questions about the book. Why did the military keep such a high-level book locked away? Was it because everyone had died, or were they planning to sell it off in the future? Either way, he had never heard of someone possessing a shadow ability before. Just then, the annoying voice was heard again. So, it looks like you want to learn more about the book, huh? Well, I can tell you if you want. Do you want to know? The AI system seemed to be just as annoying as the man himself. Please, Quinn said while gritting his teeth. Your guess is correct. Blooded refers to those that have been blessed or cursed, whichever way you want to look at it, with vampire blood. It doesn't matter if they're a halfling, a vampire lord, or even a ghoul. As long as they possess some of the vampire's blood, they are able to learn these abilities. Do you know why the book was here? I have no clue. The AI system had surprisingly answered in great detail. It was like the blonde man said. While the inspect skill was able to tell him information about items, his system would clarify things to him related to the system. Quinn was still unsure about whether to learn it or not, as he still needed more information, and it seemed like the AI was the perfect person to ask. Is this the only ability book vampires can learn? And can vampires learn more than one ability? Just like humans, vampires are only able to learn one ability. Whether or not there are other ability books out there like this, who knows? There may be some stronger, there may be some weaker. The AI system was only an AI system after all. Even though the man sounded intelligent with a stupid voice, it was limited to what it could answer. The problem was if this truly was another ability that Quinn was unable to use in the outside world, he didn't want it. Another ability that the world didn't know about meant he would be targeted. However, the question remained if there even was an ability that vampires could use as well as humans. Quinn had asked the AI more questions hoping to get an answer it had no clue and would just reply back with sarcastic answers. With that being said, there was one person in the room that was knowledgeable about these things, and he might just know about the shadow ability. Vorden. Although the system stated blooded were the only ones that could learn it, maybe there were other vampires out there that had used the ability before. As the two pasted by each other while making their rounds around the stadium, Quinn popped the question. Vorden, have you ever heard an ability that uses shadows? Shadows. Honestly, my gut instinct would be no, or at least not the world anyway. But you were honest with me, so it's time I'll be honest with you, said Vorden. The two of them then sat down a few chairs apart in the stadium, one of the rows that hadn't been trashed for the fight. Remember when I said earlier how I kept an eye on you because I couldn't copy your ability? Well, you're not the first one. Or not the first one in our family, said Vorden. As you know, I'm an original, so our powers have been passed down from generation to generation for hundreds of years. In my great-grandfather's journal, there was a time he said he had come across another user with an ability. Now back then, this was rare. The whole world still didn't know humans had super capabilities. But each time we would come across one, our family would log it, especially since our ability relied on others. For the first time, he had come across someone's ability he couldn't copy. So, is that why you were so interested in me? Vorden's face started to go a little red as he was embarrassed hearing those words. When you say it like that, it sounds a little strange. I assure you I don't think of you in that way. Vorden said awkwardly, but then his face went serious. Now that I told you, tell me, how would something the public not know about? Would you know about? At the moment, Quinn lifted the ability book in his hand, which had the words shadow ability written across it. For a second, Vorden had to rub his eyes to check he wasn't seeing things. He thought perhaps Quinn might have learned something when he turned into a vampire about it, but to actually have the ability book in his hand itself. Well, you actually found it. I was sure it would have been an original skill, but there was actually an ability book. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's learn it now. We have all the time in the world, and we're stuck here doing nothing. Well, I really do want to learn it, but the problem is if I did, others would be after me just like they would for the vampire ability. Vorden started to think long and hard if there was anything he could do to help him. Then his master plan had come to him. I think we can use the situation we're in to your advantage, said Vorden. The school must know by now that we have been sent to another planet. A red portal planet at that. There are things that have been undiscovered on these planets all the time. You could just say you found the book here, that you learn it for your survival. They all know you're level 1 trash. Vorden paused for a moment after saying those words. I mean, they all think you're just a level 1, right? I'll say while we were in the portal world, I protected you, and as payment, after learning the skill, you decided to hand the book over to me. That way the people will no longer be bugging you for it, but my family instead. Vorden smiled as if he had just cracked the toughest case in a mystery novel. Are you sure your family will be okay with that? For a split second, Quinn thought he had seen Vorden's face drop, but when he blinked and looked again, it was completely normal. Yeah, they'll be fine. With the plan or set, let's get to learning that ability book. I can't wait to see the faces of everyone when we get out of here. If we get out of here, Quinn said. Do you have to be so negative? Chapter 89, Unlocking the Shadow. Vorden and Quinn stood opposite each other in the center of the stadium, not too far from each other, so they could hear each other without having the need to shout. Now, what I'm about to tell you, they would probably teach you at the school later on anyway. But I'm going to tell you now, because it should be helpful when learning the ability book. Vorden then started to use the magnetism ability he had obtained from Ian. He pulled over a small bolt and began to levitate around in his hand. Everyone knows about the power level system. There are 8 levels in total. These levels are actually determined by how many mutant cells you're able to activate in your body, and not actually determined by strength. Let's take the Earth ability as an example. Someone with a low number of cells is only able to transform the Earth they can hold in their hand, while a level 5 Earth user might be able to lift the Earth from the ground without touching it. These type of ability books contain information on how to activate more mutant cells for your specific type of ability. But if the power levels don't actually determine strength, then why the test when we started school? Quinn asked. Good question, said Vorden. The test the military gives you is actually to put you into the subcategories they created, the 1.1, 1.2, etc. This can sometimes be determined by what skills you have as well. Vorden then lifted up his wristwatch and showed him the number currently displayed, which said 6 on it. Quinn was suddenly confused because he was sure he had seen the number 5 on it before. These watches are the answer. The watches they put on us are able to determine the number of mutant cells in our body. Before even taking the test, they knew what level we were at. They simply just set the watches to an off mode the moment we arrived. When I use my ability, I also copy the number of mutant cells in their body, which is why the watch now shows the number 6. Quinn seemed to be learning so much, it just proved that the information that was revealed to originals compared to the rest was different. This also further confirmed that Quinn being a vampire wasn't an ability. The number on his watch had never changed. Or maybe it was the fact that his cells were no longer human. Think about it. Not every test is able to determine someone's strength. Some abilities allow you to tell if someone is telling the truth. Some allow super hearing, and some can help you see into the future. Although these might not be strong fighting abilities themselves, they require a high number of mutant cells to activate in the first place. And now, that brings me to your book. Borden said, as he pointed towards it. Not everyone can activate a high number of cells. Some ability books are just too high for people to learn. They try and try, but they will never be able to succeed. To put it simply, their fate was decided for them at birth. It might take a while before we can tell if you have the ability to learn it or not. It sounded harsh, but what Vorden was saying was true. He had heard examples of rich CEOs who had bought their kids high-level ability books, only to be disappointed when they weren't able to succeed. Now we move on to the second problem. Even though you have the ability book, what about skill books? With no skills, you will most likely only be able to unlock January 10th TH of its power. But don't let that get you down. The ability books and skill books are only shortcuts to learning these things in the first place. When the originals discovered their powers, they had no books. They learnt and discovered everything themselves. Quinn thought about everything Vorden had said. He further went on to explain that each book would explain a technique that could be used to mutate a specific type of cell. The higher the ability book, the more information it would reveal about the method used. Some abilities just didn't have lower levels and required people to have a high number of mutant cells to use them. There was another little bit of information he reviled, but decided to not go into too much detail. It was the fact that your soul weapon also had something to do with the number of mutated cells in your body as well. This would determine how strong of a soul weapon you had. The example Vorden gave was Momo. Although Momo's ability wasn't too strong in a fight, his soul weapon was incredibly powerful as a level 6 ability user. Vorden had explained that learning a level 6 ability book of the bat would take months to learn, but while here, they could get a head start. But Quinn thought differently. There was one thing Vorden didn't know, and it was his vampire abilities also worked like a system. He touched the book once more, and the system message popped up again. Would you like to learn the level 6 shadow ability? There was no going back after this. Yes. The book then lifted into the air, and the pages started turning and flashing in front of him. Suddenly, there was the sense of déjà vu. Vorden stood on the sideline and took a step back. He had never seen anything like this happen before. Then finally, once all of the pages of the book had been flipped, it disappeared and vanished into thin air. Vorden immediately rushed over to Quinn, who was holding his head with his hand. What happened? Are you okay? Vorden asked. Yeah, I'm fine. As the pain in his head slowly went away, he looked up, and in front of his vision, he was greeted with multiple messages. Congratulations, you have learnt the level 6 shadow ability. You have now unlocked the shadow skills tab. You have unlocked the mutant cell stat. 10 skill points have been added. New shadow skill dimensional storage has been activated. New skill shadow control LV.1 has been added. Chapter 90, Exploring the Shop. The ability book had vanished once again, just like the old book he had received. This time he had also been given an entirely new tab that was dedicated only to his shadow ability in his system. Hey Quinn, what's wrong? Did something happen? Where's the book? Vorden asked. Quinn then went to tap his head a couple of times with his finger. Inside? Said Vorden. What? You mean it's inside your head? Quinn nodded. Vorden was surprised, but at the same time not. He had learned so many crazy things today, and this one was probably one of the least shocking. He could imagine that maybe whoever created the shadow book might have put a condition on it. Maybe once it was learned to vanish or disappear, it would also explain why many weren't found or how none were sold on the market. Vorden didn't ask too many questions and gave Quinn a few moments to sit down and rest. He didn't really understand what he meant by it was all inside his head. Of course, this was Quinn's way of getting around telling Vorden it was a system. Status, race, vampire, ability, shadow, HP, 55/55, MC 100/100, strength 15, stamina 15, agility 15, charm 5. The first thing he decided to do was check out his stat screen. One of the messages had stated he had obtained a new stat called mutant cells, or MC for short. Looking at his MC stat, it currently displayed 100 out of 100. System, can you explain the MC status to me? Oh, ho. A cheery voice said, the MC stat is how many mutant cells you currently have in your body. Every time you use your ability, the MC numbers will go down, but worry not, for it will auto-regenerate itself over time. Quinn then looked at the 2 stat points he had obtained. One from leveling up to level 10, and then the other from when he had consumed Ian's blood. But when he tried to see what he could do with them, he was unable to increase his MC points, meaning it was a similar stat to his HP. The question was whether it would increase on its own like his HP. I can tell you the answer to that, the system said. The answer is no. Those mutant cells have a cap in your body. This can only be increased by a certain technique specific to the shadow ability. You would either have to find a higher level ability book or a teacher. With that said, Quinn decided to put his stat points into strength and agility, as he's been doing so far. Right now, he only had one skill that required the use of charm, and he didn't know how useful it would be. Strength 16, agility 16. As he increased each stat point, he could feel the changes in his body ever so slightly. The feeling was starting to become addictive, but he was still a long way off from the others. Aaron, who was a level 5 ability user, was able to produce a score of 50 on the strength test. That was also without the use of any beast gear to improve herself. While Vorden was still giving him space and walking around the room, it also gave Quinn the time to check out a few of the other things he had unlocked earlier. First, there was a new tutorial video. There was a single video called Combination Skills. The video was a long watch as it took time to explain the process. Quinn didn't have time to watch it now and would watch it later. The next thing was the shop tab. When selecting this tab, he was able to search by category, and there was a whole bunch of items, weapons, armor, rings, and all sorts, but there were no skill books or ability books. The only problem was all of the items were grayed out, not allowing him to select any of them. To the side of the screen, it showed his inventory, where he had 16 basic tier crystals, 1 intermediate crystal, and also an advanced tier crystal as well. He didn't know when he had obtained them, but at some point, he must have done. Was it while I was a bloodsucker? But Quinn couldn't remember killing anything other than Ian. It was the only explanation. When he had murdered Ian, did all his crystals transfer over into his system? The section to the right allowed him to select the item. He first chose the Radiclaw crystals. The shop auto-sorted itself and gave a message in the center. No items can be made with these crystals. Then when selecting the other 2 crystals, items had appeared up in the center this time. Although these items were still grayed out, but Quinn now knew the reason why. 3 intermediate crystal required to create this item. The items required several crystals to make them. After searching through the shop more, he realized there were some weapons and items that only needed a number of crystals, while others were more specific and needed a specific type of beast crystal. When selecting the advanced tier crystal, the shop auto-sorted itself once again, and a ring was shown on screen. 1 out of 10 advanced tier deathbat crystals. Effects. Allows the user to walk in the sun for 3 hours without being affected by the sun. This was a fantastic discovery. While Quinn was planning to create an outfit that completely blocked out the sun, there was a ring in the shop that had the same effect. The only problem was it required him to kill 10 of these deathbats, which were advanced tier beasts. Thinking back to how he had nearly died from the intermediate beast, there was no way he would attempt to kill an advanced tier beast. Then, there was a second problem. Beasts, especially on the higher tiers, were quite specific to what planet they lived on. At some point, if Quinn wanted to earn the ring from the shop, he would have to come back to this planet through the portal. All in all, the shop was a good find. Quinn started to question the AI system further on how the shop worked, and he had explained that as long as he brought the items that it asked for, it would be able to auto-create it and give it to him. This was another excellent find, as usually after obtaining beast crystals, you would have to take it to a beast weapons crafter who would charge for the making of the item. Then a question hit Quinn's mind. Crystals could only be turned into one type of item, which all had the same effect. The quality of the item created would depend on the crafter, but if the item was destined to be a ring, a sword was unable to be crafted from the same type of crystal. Did Ian know what item the deathbat crystal would give him? And if so, why would Ian need such a thing? It might have not even been Ian in the first place, but whoever had hired him and taken down the deathbats. Chapter 91, Exploring the Shadow. With no way of getting any of the items from the shop, for now, he decided it was time for him to check out the Shadow tab, a whole new section of his system that had been added as soon as he obtained the ability. Underneath the tab was a list of around 10 different skills, each one grayed out apart from the 2 skills he had learned previously. Below he could scroll down further, but everything just appeared as several question marks. The first skill, Dimensional Storage. This skill will allow the user to store items into its shadow storage. As long as there is a shadow nearby, you can take out and put in items as you wish. This includes your very own shadow underneath your feet. If only I had this skill sooner, Quinn thought. Back in the storage room, there were many items that Quinn wished to bring with him. There were multiple skill books and ability books that he had already converted into EXP and wouldn't be able to gain anything again. At the time, he wished to bring them with him to at least sell on the marketplace, but was unable to carry them. If he wanted to do that now, it meant leaving from the safety of the training center and heading back outside where the beasts were. While Quinn's system allowed him to store crystals and specific ability books inside, it did not allow him to store anything else. So the dimensional storage was a great skill to have. The second skill, Shadow Control, LV.1, allows the user to control their own shadow. The description was short and didn't really reveal much. Even if he could control his own shadow, what use was that? But the significant difference with this skill compared to the last skill was the fact that it had a level by the side. If it was like Quinn's blood skills, then as long as he carried on using it, it would eventually level up, maybe even allowing him to create shadows or use his own shadows. Quinn then looked at the skills tab again. At the moment, he was able to see 10 skill in total while the rest were covered. Next to each skill was a number. Shadow Cloak LV.1, 10 skill points to unlock. There were multiple skills, but Shadow Cloak was the only one that he was able to unlock right now. He only had received 10 skill points and wondered how he would be able to obtain more. Judging by its name, perhaps the skill would be able to surround him like some type of shadow. He started to wonder if it would also be able to block out the sunlight, which made him feel so weak. His excitement got the better of him, and as long as he could unlock the other skills later on, what was there to worry about? You have successfully unlocked Shadow Cloak LV.1. This skill allows you to use your own shadow to surround you into the darkness. You opponents will struggle to see you depending on their level of perception. Best used in the shadow or at night. It wasn't exactly what he was expecting, but it seemed like it was a type of invisibility cloak, one that would work well on beasts that were weak, but not those of a higher level. Quinn then stood up on the ground and was ready to test out his skills. He could see that Vorden was still walking around the stadium, seeing if he could find anything. It was hard for Vorden to see due to the lights being broken, and he didn't have the same type of vision as Quinn. That meant the whole room was dark. Perfect. Shadow Cloak activated. 1 MC for every 10 seconds of use. His own shadow below started to lift up from the ground and slowly crept up his body, from his toes to his knees, all the way to the top strands of hair on his head. Now, when looking from the outside, a strange foggy like mist could be seen covering him. As Quinn walked around the arena, he could see that his MC stat was like a bar. While using the skill, it was slowly going down. He crept up slowly to Vorden in the stands going between the chairs, and it seemed his skill was working. While Quinn was stood around 10 meters apart, it looked like Vorden had no idea he was there. But then when he took another step closer, Vorden immediately jumped back and attracted a chair into his hand. Although Vorden was struggling to see what it was, he could feel strange energy disrupting the flow around him. The hairs on his body were standing up. Then when he concentrated, he could see something shifting in the air. Vorden went to repel the chair, throwing it in Quinn's direction. The chair flew right past and into the stands. Hey, wait, it's just me, Quinn said as he deactivated his skill and could be seen ducked down. What the hell, Quinn? You almost gave me a heart attack. Do you not remember? Just seconds ago, I was fighting to the death against you. Vorden complained. I've been on high alert since. Sorry, Quinn said as he let out a little nervous laugh. But man, you already know how to use the shadow ability already, and that seemed like a skill. Vorden asked, amazed. Usually, it would take months to learn how to use an ability and some skills even longer. Yet here Quinn was being able to handle everything straight away. Like I said, when I read that book, it seems like all the information was inserted into my head. All I have to do is think about it, and I can do it. Vorden then walked over towards Quinn and took out his hand. Do you mind this time? Vorden asked. Sure, go ahead. The two shook hands, and the same message had appeared as last time. An ability has been detected. Ability has been blocked. What's the meaning of this? Quinn asked inside his head to the AI system. The system will try its best to do whatever it can to help the user. It will tell you when abilities are being used on you and all sorts. Can I temporarily cancel the feature? Quinn asked. It's not really a feature. It's just informing you of what your vampire body is naturally doing. Besides, even if the boy could copy your ability, he wouldn't be able to use it. What do you mean? That skill book you used is specific for vampire cells. Inside your body right now are vampire mutated cells. This is the reason why he can't copy it. Your body structures are completely different. But you could always turn him into a blooded one. Would you like to activate skill blood ritual? Yes, no. Chapter 92 Blood Ritual. Quinn was wondering what the blood ritual was. After all, there wasn't much information revealed about it. But now that the system was offering for Vorden to become a blooded one, it all became clear to him. It was a ritual that would allow Vorden to turn into some type of vampire. Underneath the skill, it also had the number 0/2. This would assume that at most, he was only able to turn 2 people. This number might increase in the future, but for now, that was how it was. I can't just turn Vorden into a vampire. He would have to deal with the same crap that I had to deal with. Quinn thought, maybe I needed it to make myself stronger. But for Vorden who was already strong, there's no upside. A thought then came into his mind. The blonde man in the video had told him to grow his own army, and soon others would come for him. Was this what he was talking about? In the end, though, Quinn decided it wasn't his decision to make. Vorden had helped big time, and if he wanted to, then it was his choice. And it would be nice to have people to go through this with. Hey, Vorden, if you had the option, or let's say I could turn you into a vampire, would you? Quinn asked. I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything like that, but the answer would be no, Vorden replied. Being weak for most of the day, sure it's fine while we're on a planet like this, but besides, what would happen to my ability? Quinn waited for the AI to answer his concern. The AI actually started to seem smarter than he first thought. For what he said earlier, and also giving him the option to use his skill, meant it was listening in on everything that was being said. Fine, I can see you're waiting for an answer. His whole cell structure would change, and he would then become a vampire. Or something like one anyway, which yes would mean he would no longer have his ability. Not only that, but it might be a while before he could learn one as well. What do you mean? Quinn asked. You didn't learn the shadow ability the conventional way. There's no longer an ability book to learn from. It would be nearly impossible for you to teach it to him. Then you would have to wait until you found an ability book compatible with your vampire cells. Yeah, sorry, Vorden, it probably would get rid of your ability, Quinn said, scratching the back of his head. I just thought I would ask. You might have been one of those types obsessed with vampires. There are people like that, Vorden replied. The two of them then started to head down the stadium floor, an area that was designed for combat. They had been looking around the room for an hour now, and it seemed like they were unable to find a place where the portal could be. They needed to make a decision, whether or not to leave the training center and head outside to look for another place. But before deciding any of that, Quinn wanted to get the hang of his new skills. Vorden was also interested and thought he might be able to help since he had experience with using elemental abilities before. The first test was his dimensional storage skill. Just like with his other skills, all he needed to do was think about it in his head, and it would activate. While activated, the shadow from his own body started to wiggle and swirl about a bit. It looked like an ocean continually moving. Using a piece of metal he grabbed earlier, he slowly pushed it into his shadow, and the object started to sink in until it eventually disappeared. That's kind of neat, Vorden said, watching. Can you get back out? Quinn then placed his hand into his shadow. As he did, his arm sunk into it, but he could feel nothing. He then thought of the piece of metal, and suddenly he could feel something in his hand. He pulled, and out came the piece of scrap metal. The two continued to do more tests with the dimensional storage. Quinn found out that not only a shadow could be used to gain access to things, but also Vorden's shadow or any shadow cast by the wall and buildings. When Quinn touched these shadows, they too would start to wiggle like his own shadow. The next test was to see if they could store items bigger than the shadow itself. Vorden gathered a bunch of chairs from the stadium and formed them into one giant flat metal circle. Then Quinn placed one hand on the circle while the other on his shadow to store the item. The shadow underneath his foot started to expand into the shadow created by the large circle. Eventually, the whole thing dropped inside. It seemed like the size of the item did not matter, and the good thing was it didn't take up any MC to use it. The next skill, as the one Quinn was looking forward to the most. Shadow Control, a skill that didn't say much in terms of description. Shadow Control, LV1 active. Then inside Quinn's mind, something had clicked. He felt like he had a new set of arms he could control. The shadow underneath his legs was alive and could freely move about. He lifted the shadow, and it was like a dark, moving mist that continually surrounded him. I guess the skill is limited to just the shadow around you for now. It's like a level 1 Earth ability, said Vorden. I wonder why it needs so many mutant cells to activate and is considered a level 6. Using the shadow around him, Quinn was able to extend it out and lift the small piece of metal that he pulled from his dimension earlier. It was like controlling another person. After using it for a while, Quinn seemed to get the hang of it. He could move the shadow to go anywhere around his body, or he could form it into whatever he liked. Even weapons, but when changing it into a sword-like shape and trying to cut the metal, it did nothing but go around it. It seemed like the shadow sword did not have the same properties. Well, now that you got the hang of it, you want to spar a little? Borden asked. Chapter 93 Rescue Team arrive. Having the shadow just active and moving about didn't take much MC. It only took about 1 point of MC per minute, which meant he could play about and activate the shadow for around an hour and a half if he didn't use any other skills. This didn't change, no matter what he did with the shadow. However, there did seem to be one downside. While he was using his shadow control skill, he was unable to cast Shadow Cloak, or even use his Shadow Dimension. The shadow underneath him was no longer there and was being controlled. If he activated Shadow Dimension, the shadow would immediately fall to his feet again. Now the two of them stood opposite each other ready to have a friendly fight. Borden this time had a couple of metal balls hovering around him instead of spikes. Be careful, Quinn. Although these might not be like the spikes, they can still do a lot of damage. It's alright, Borden, my body can handle it. Not using his full strength, Borden repelled the ball at a decent speed heading towards Quinn. At that moment, he lifted the shadow from his feet to form a type of wall. As the two made an impact, the ball seemed to slow down. It started sinking through the shadow, slowly, then part of it could be seen from the other side. Quinn stared at the ball carefully, and then when the ball had nearly passed through the shadow wall, it started to accelerate. Oh. The ball left the shadow wall and slammed right into Quinn's stomach, falling to the ground. "R," Quinn shouted as he tried to breathe in some air. "Well, I wasn't expecting that," Borden said. "Try again." Quinn groaned. Borden then fired the second ball of metal, and once again Quinn lifted up his shadow shield, and the same result had appeared. Only this time Quinn moved to the side, allowing the shadow to stay where it was before moving the shadow. The ball then carried on moving forward and banged into the stadium wall. "Let's see how physical attacks work," Borden said as he moved forward and swung a long metal pipe he had in his hand. Using the shadow, Quinn blocked again, and the same thing happened. However, Borden was easily able to pull the object away from the shadow and attack in a new place. He also noticed that the shadow was only covering Quinn's front and was not big enough to go around his back. If he was to use his attract skill on one of the metal balls, he would easily be able to hurt Quinn right now. Borden continued to attack with the metal pipe, and Quinn continued to block moving the shadow in the areas where Quinn was attacking. That's when he released something. Every time Quinn would hit his shadow, his MC points would go down by a chunk or so. The same thing had happened when he threw out the balls. The stronger the attack, it seemed the more MC points would be used from a shadow. Then when Borden was about to attack one more time, "Wait, stop, Borden," Quinn shouted. His shadow had vanished, and he had run out of MC points. The shadow acted as a type of shield. It wasn't solid enough to block attacks, but would be able to slow them down. Later, when Quinn's MC points were restored a little bit, he did a few other tests. If Borden was close enough, he could use the shadow to grab onto him like an extra pair of hands, or even grab onto his legs, slowing him down. But there wasn't enough of the shadow to use it in both of these ways. He could simply either use the shadow to attack or to defend. "Well, I can see why your ability is a level 6 now," Borden said. "I think it's more to do with how freely you can use the shadow, and my example will be the skills. Normally a skill would just be a different type of attack, but your ability, your shadows can actually be used to do entirely new things. A separate storage space, masking you in the night, and even as a defensive shield. It's almost as if you have 3 abilities combined into one." Quinn was happy with the results of the shadow ability, and hearing Borden talk about made him feel even more confident. He couldn't wait to unlock the other skills in the shadow tab of his system. With the spar over, the two of them decided that once Quinn was fully rested and his MC points were back, they would exit out of the training center and go exploring again. After all, if they did nothing, they would soon start to starve, and Borden didn't want another instance where Quinn got hungry. It took around 30 seconds for Quinn to gain back a single MC point, so it would take around an hour for all of his points to be restored. Then they would make their move back to the outside. Outside, in the abandoned shelter, somewhere in the city between 2 broken-down buildings in the middle of the street, a specific area started to appear distorted. The space itself looked as if it was bending. Then little sparks of electricity were seen coming from it. Zap! Suddenly, 4 people appeared holding hands together on the street. As soon as they saw where they were, they immediately let go. "Is everyone here?" Faye asked as she did a head count. The homeroom teacher Dell was here, although he was still wearing clothing like he was ready to teach. Then, there was the Dr. Haley. She was dressed more appropriately with high-end beast gear all over. She didn't look like her usual self in her white robe and looked almost intimidating. It was what one would expect, as her father was one of the generals of the school. Then there was Leo. He was wearing light armor that fitted tightly to the skin similar to Faye. Both of their abilities focused on speed, so it was important not to wear something too heavy. "All right, our goal is to find the children," Faye said. The rescue team had arrived. Chapter 94, Who is Stronger? When entering the portal, as long as there was one on the other end, it would throw you somewhere within a 1-mile radius of another, as long as there was already a portal set up on the other end. The reason why the group were holding hands is to ensure that they would all be teleported to the same place. Unlike when Quinn and Borden entered the teleporter one by one, they were chucked to different locations. On Dell's back was a fairly large rucksack that looked quite heavy. As he walked with the group, hit footsteps, stomped the ground, and his back was arched. "Why do I have to carry this thing?" "Blunt. Right now you're the weakest of us 4, right?" Faye replied. "So if you want us to protect you, it's best that you carry the portable teleporter." Dell then looked at Haley, who was by his side, and even he had to admit she looked quite frightening for a doctor. She was in a full set of large beast gear, a frightening-looking chest piece that looked to have a face on it and spikes sticking out of the shoulder pads. On her back, she was carrying a large single greatsword that was nearly the same size as herself. She almost looked like a professional traveler that went hunting in these types of places all the time. Rich people, that's what happens when your father is a general in the army. Dell thought. Fine, I understand that, but why even the need to bring the portable teleporter in the first place? Isn't the teleporter fine on this end? Dell asked. It's back up, Leo said. Look around you and look at this shelter. It was basically the size of a city. Don't you think they had people protecting it as strong as us? We might encounter a strong beast and have to make an emergency exit, or there might even be beast blocking the current portal. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Okay, with that said and done, let's head for the training center. It was the place the portal was last known to be, and we can see if it's safe or not. Leo will lead the way for us. I don't want to stay on this planet for long, and I don't want to find out what destroyed this shelter. Leo walked up front, and using his ability, the group were able to avoid trouble. In a way, although blind, his sight was better than the others. His ability allowed him to see an aura around things and see them in different colors. A beast's aura was always red, while humans yellow. It also allowed him to see the aura through most objects such as building walls and so on, allowing them to avoid any confrontation with beasts. However, if the group saw only a few Radiclaw that they could deal with, instead of taking the long route round, Leo and Faye would often head out and deal with them quickly. The two of them were both swordsmen. While Faye would use her longsword, Leo would use his katana blade, not even giving the rats a chance to live. As they continued to walk, Haley had a question on her mind after seeing the two of them deal with the rats. I always wondered, which of you two are stronger? Haley asked. The two up front suddenly froze, and Dell looked at Haley like she had no sense of personal questions. Hey, you can't just ask something like that. The Guispith. Of course he was interested. Everyone was. These types of questions came up all the time. Faith and Leo were both of the same ranks. 2 of the 8 sergeants at the school. Talk always happened between the other teachers and soldiers about who was the strongest out of them all. This also happened regularly with the 3 generals. It's okay, Faye said. I can easily answer for you. It's Leo. I don't know if you two know this, but we had to practically beg him to join our ranks after the First War. Back then, he was only a private, but he had made so many accomplishments. It was unbelievable. He had one condition when joining the army. I would like to become a teacher. Leo didn't say anything after that. In fact, he never spoke much in the first place, but Dell was still wondering how it was possible. Leo's ability was handy, sure, and it might be a high-level ability, but that was only because it required a high amount of MC to use, not because it was powerful. While Faye had the ability of super speed, if the two of them fought, there was no way he could see her losing. In the end, Dell thought she must have just said that to be kind to her senior. Faye was still quite young, after all, only in her late 20s. Finally, the group had arrived just outside the training center. We'll make sure the portal is safe first, and then after we will go out looking for the kids, Faye said. The entrance looks clear, said Leo. They walked onward and eventually saw the dead Radiclaws just outside of the entrance. Not only that, but the entrance to the place was completely busted. It had been bent and mismangled, but was still covering the door. Faye went to the access machine and tried the code. The sound went off, indicating that it was unlocked, but the doors wouldn't move. They were too damaged. What happened here? Haley asked. Do you think it was the kids? I think you mean kid, Dell added. Only one of them has an ability, remember? Ah, Vorden the original correct. His ability is to copy that of others. Although we don't really know how it works, it could be possible. If he copied a strong ability, then I could see him being able to kill these rats, said Faye. Well, if we find Vorden, we can go home, right? Dell asked. Are you suggesting we leave and not bother looking for the other one? Leo asked. The mission stated to only find Vorden. Anyone else is considered a bonus. Would you risk your lives for one student? When I joined that war, what do you think I was doing? Leo asked. I was risking my life for the sake of everyone. For the sake of the human race's future, and you know what? That is these children. Enough you two, Faye snapped. Technically Dell is correct, but I see you are passionate about this. We will scout the nearby area, using your ability. If we find nothing, then we leave. Fair. Leo didn't say much and started to walk up to the door. He drew out his katana blade and readied himself. Isn't that door made out of glathrium? It's one of the hardest materials we know of. It's why this training center remained unharmed in the first place. Dell said, chuckling at the idiotic attempt Leo was about to make. I'm assuming you wanted to know why Leo is stronger than I am. Faye asked. Leo slashed the door with one swing. No sound was made, and it seemed like the door wasn't even touched. Then a few seconds later, a vertical slash was seen in the door, and the top half fell backwards onto the floor. That's why, said Faye. Chapter 95, True Dream, Familie. After entering through the glathrium door, the group then went to lift the fallen part of the door up and place it back up. It was heavy, but with Haley's help, the door felt extremely light, and they managed to set it perfectly like a jigsaw puzzle. While it might not keep the beast out at least, it would deter them from entering. Dell, watching the whole thing, hated to think just how high a level of beast equipment Haley was wearing to be able to lift the door so easily. They continued to walk in the hallway, which was covered in darkness, although for Leo, leading the way it made no difference. But while walking, Dell couldn't get out of his head how easily Leo was able to break the door. It wasn't like Dell was a student, he was a professor too. He had participated in the war back then as well and never saw anything like what he saw today. Could it be a demon-level weapon? He thought. But he quickly came to the conclusion that it was impossible. At the moment, there were only 2 demon-level beast weapons in existence. One of them belonged to the army, while the other belonged to the group known as Pure. However, it was clear to Dell that what Leo was using was at least a top-level beast tier weapon. They had entered the reception area, where several doorways were leading to different sections of the training center. At the front, there was the reception desk with 2 hallways leading to the arena. Then there was the actual reception room, which could also lead you to the canteen and the living quarters. Wait, stop, Haley said to Leo and Faye up front. She bent down and studied the ground. Can you see what this is? It's blood and leading that way, she said as she pointed to the living quarters. How can you tell which direction? It's coming from the stadium as well. Dell asked. Well, the blood tail, you can see that it's heading in this direction, and there's a lot of it, almost as if someone was dragged this way. Come on, Let's hurry. It could be one of the students, Faye said. They made sure not to rush, but quickly headed in the direction of the blood, following the trail. If there was a beast inside, they needed to make sure they wouldn't startle it. Leo also no longer took the lead, and instead, it was Faye. Usually, Leo's ability would allow him to detect auras and abilities through walls and such, but it didn't work through Glathrium, and the whole place was made of it. Although he could still direct himself, he couldn't tell if there was danger up ahead until actually seeing it. They followed the trail until finally, it led them to the hallway, with a broken door outside and a ripped-apart chair. Faye peeked her head into the room with the broken door and immediately turned away. Haley, I think you better take a look at this, Faye said, turning her head away. Haley took over and went inside the room, while Dell also took a look and turned his head away. Did you see the body? Dell said. Its body was ripped in half, guts spilling everywhere. Leo, who was standing next to him, turned his head and looked him in the eye. No, I didn't see anything. I haven't done so in a while now. Haley continued to examine the body. She went around the man's neck. Underneath his beast armor, she pulled out a colored dog tag. While holding the dog tag, she continued to inspect the body, and that's when she spotted something. Again, 2 bite marks on the neck, just like the other students. Haley thought, is there really a beast inside the academy somewhere, the same thing that killed this man? Or is it something else? Haley then stood up from the body and walked forward. Do you want the good news or bad news? She said. Just tell us everything, Faye replied. Well, the good news is it's not one of the students. Haley then pulled out the tag, which was attached to a chain, and dangled it in front of the others. The bad news is he was from one of the big 4 families. Each person's face dropped as soon as they heard the news. Which one? Faye asked. The tag says True Dream. Faye immediately slammed her fist against the wall as she heard those words. Why them out of all the families? The big 4 families were the ones who had the power to rival the military. They were originals with immense power who chose not to share their abilities. However, the True Dream family were the most unique out of the 4. They had the closest connection with the military, enough to even have a seat at the council table. This was all because of the head of the family, who had the ability to steal others' abilities. If anyone ever tried to rebel against the army, then they would get a visit from the True Dream leader, and they could never use their ability again. The only problem was True Dream could only take away their abilities, but not use them. So he needed a strong ally, and that's why he got close to the military. Then when he felt safe and protected, he started to gather his own men. The abilities he had taken, he would gift to those he trusted, and they were truly grateful to him. But there was always this fear in the back of his mind. He could be betrayed by his own. With no powers for himself, he chose to stay by the military side. This fear kept people in line. This fear was what made people complacent with the system the military had today. Although many didn't agree with the cruel ways and the carrot and stick approach the current army had, they had no choice. We can leave him here for now, but it's best before we leave, we bring his body and take it to the True Dream family. It's a pain, but they should be thankful we brought back one of their own, Faye said. After leaving the body be, they decided to follow the trail of blood back outside and into the stadium, and that's when they spotted the 2 kids lying down on the floor. They're here, what luck, Dell said as he ran forward. Haley, Faye and Dell immediately went forward while Leo was the only one who stayed back. For in the center of the arena, he could see a color of aura he had never seen before, one which was purple. Chapter 96 EM6. Before the rescue team had arrived, Vorden and Quinn were both sitting down in the center of the arena. The 2 of them didn't have much to talk about, so they just chatted about their old lives at school. Quinn's life seemed horrible. He went on to explain how he was raised with no parents and how he was bullied since entering school. The bullying wasn't really bad until the treaty was signed. When there was no more war, that's when people started to go crazy. However, whenever Quinn would ask Vorden about his school life, he would give a simple answer and ask Quinn a question. The first few times, he didn't really notice anything strange, but then Quinn started purposely asking questions that were harder to avoid. But again, Vorden seemed to avoid the question. In the end, Quinn decided to stop. It wasn't right integrating someone like this. If Vorden had something he didn't want to share, then it was up to him. Hey, I just noticed something, Vorden said as he pointed at Quinn's wrist. Quinn lifted his hand and looked at it, and even he was surprised by what he was seeing. The number on his wristwatch was still saying he was a level 1. I thought you said it would change when I activated my MC points. Well, that's what's supposed to happen. Vorden then placed his hand on his chin as he thought about it for a while. Do you think it's because you're a vampire? Just like how I can't copy your shadow ability, the watch might not be able to measure your type of MC in your body. Hearing this news, Quinn was actually a little upset. With the use and gain of an ability, as well as Vorden's plan, he was looking forward to being able to use his powers freely. As a level 6 user, people would no longer challenge him just as he walked around the school. But now, if he showed he had shadow powers and the number on his wristwatch still indicated 1, they would be just as suspicious about him. They would say the watch was broken and get him a new one, but it would just be the same result. I think it's best if you hide your shadow ability for now, said Vorden. You've already hidden your vampire abilities for this long. You can hide your shadow abilities, right? Vorden could see Quinn was a little downhearted by the news he had given him. After learning what Quinn had gone through at his last school, it was understandable. In a way, Vorden thought he was helping him by getting revenge and attacking those second years, but it was just making him and Peter a bigger target. I'm so selfish, Vorden thought. Don't look so down, said Vorden. If we find someone in the school that's good at technology, we can get them to tinker with the watch. They don't need to find out about your cells, but just get someone to hack it, so it displays the number 6. Plus, look at the bright side. The military tournament is coming up, and it would be good if you hide your ability until then. Show everyone on the big stage. Besides, if you came back with a level 6 now, they would be more shocked about how you learned it so fast, so it works in our favor. Hearing those words did cheer Quinn up a bit. There was always a geeky person who was good at technology in the school. The only problem was approaching said person. Maybe this was something Layla would be better doing. Just then, the sergeants and professors had entered the room, and surprisingly, the first person who ran up to the both of them was their homeroom teacher, Delaware. He continued to dash forward until he gave the two of them a big hug. "I'm so glad you're both safe," he said with tears rolling down his face. Quinn and Vorden thought it was sweet and didn't realize the homeroom teacher cared about them so much. But the truth was Dell didn't care about either of them at all. He was filled with tears of joy that they wouldn't have to stay in this scary place any longer. He felt like the longer he remained in this place, the more likely he was to die, especially after seeing Ian's dead body on the floor. Haley then came over to the two of them and did a general checkup to see if they were okay. "You look a little different from the last time I saw you," Haley said. "You remember me?" Quinn asked. "Of course I do. I remember you taking that girl to my office at that time." Not many people even remembered what Quinn looked like after seeing him the first time, which is why the other teachers had no reaction when seeing him, so he was quite surprised. "Boys your age do grow quick. You're looking like a man already," she said, smiling. She didn't know why, but as she was touching Quinn all over, she could feel his bulging muscles. His body was toned for his age, and a certain feeling was coming over her a little. "Looks like the charm effect is working," the system said. "It's a shame you didn't save up all your stats and put all your points into the thing. She would have confessed to you right here and now." At first, Quinn thought the system was joking, but looking at Haley's face, she really was taking a little longer to check up on him compared to Vorden. Suddenly, she snapped out of it and took her hand away. After checking all their vitals were fine, she handed both of them a food pill. Vorden took the pill immediately while Quinn did the same. Although Quinn felt full, he decided to still take the pill regardless. However, as the pill went into Quinn's mouth and down his throat, he started coughing wildly. It was as if he was choking on the pill. "Is he choking?" Dell asked. "I highly doubt it. The pill is around the same size as a pea, and it dissolves almost immediately." Quinn continued to cough with his hands placed on his knees until he threw up all across the floor. Faye, who was standing by his side, had a worried look on her face. "Haley, quick check up on him. There's blood in his vomit." Chapter 97, IV, changed. Quinn hadn't eaten anything in the last 2 days. If this was the case with anyone else, then they would be starving with hunger. However, it wasn't the case for Quinn. Before eating the pill, he felt completely full, and he could guess the reason why. Ian's blood. The last thing he had eaten was the blood, and it was all he currently had inside his stomach. For some reason, as soon as he took that pill, it was like his body was rejecting it. Inedible substance consumed. 10 HP. 45/55 HP. Quinn had no trouble consuming foods before. Sure, his taste buds were bland compared to before, but he could always scoff the food down his throat no matter what it was. Haley rushed over to check on Quinn once again and placed him on the floor. She checked everything she could and even started to use her healing ability on his stomach. A soothing feeling came over him as the light emitting from her hands produced a faint glow. A healing ability has been detected. Unable to block ability. +1. +1. 55/55 HP. It was a relief to know that healing abilities still worked for Quinn. In the future, it would be handy to have one in his circle if he was ever seriously injured. "Thank you. I feel much better," Quinn said. Your hunger rose. Although she was able to heal him back up to full health, the healing ability could do nothing about the food he had just spilled all over the floor. "Did you find out what's wrong with the boy?" Faye asked. "Not yet," Haley replied. "But I will need to take him back to the doctor's office when I get back." Just then Leo had returned carrying something over his shoulder. As soon as he entered the room, Quinn was able to tell what it was straight away. The sweet smell was calling to him. Blood bank used. 9100 milliliters. You're no longer hungry. After taking some blood from his blood bank, he no longer had the urge to go grab the body of Leo's shoulder. However, the sweet smell did still remain in the room. "Are we ready to head off now?" Leo said, staring in the direction of Quinn. "Is he looking at me? Can't be right. He is blind after all." "Now, you two," Faye said, looking at Vorden and Quinn. "When we head back, I want a detailed report of what happened. Although we have already heard the other side of the story, we would like to hear yours so it matches up." Vorden and Quinn looked at each other. "You mean someone pushed us into the portal?" Vorden asked. "Yes, the second year who was responsible came forward and admitted it. General Duke is dealing with his punishment as we speak." The two didn't know why, but someone was covering for Peter, which meant that Vorden and Quinn's suspicions were right. Someone had asked Peter to do this, and it wasn't just anyone. Someone with a high enough backing to be able to cover up and get a second year to take the blame. The group started to walk around the training center with the kids in the center and Faye leading the front. Behind them was Leo, and now Quinn was sure of it. Leo was staring at him intently. Then he remembered Leo saying something about telling if someone was using an ability or not. Could Leo have discovered Quinn now had an ability? But if so, why wasn't he saying anything? Then before he knew it, Leo was by his side and moved his head right next to Quinn's ear. "When we're back at the school, let's have a talk, just you and me. I promise I won't hurt you," he whispered. As soon as he finished saying his words, Leo went back to his position as a guard behind them. When Quinn turned around to take a look, he could see that Leo had a big smile on his face. Quinn was finding it hard to trust people these days, but with a face like that, he really couldn't see him doing any harm, and he wanted to know what Leo wanted to talk to him about. Worst case, if he was to meet, he would bring Vorden and Layla along. Finally, they had reached the reception room, the first place they had arrived at when they entered from outside. At the desk, there was a computer with a passcode machine next to it. Faye input the code, which allowed her to turn and log into the computer. After she typed away a few things, a large mechanical sound could be heard coming from the direction of the arena. "Well, we would have never been able to open that thing ourselves," Vorden said. Although Quinn thought differently. With his inspect skill, he could have at least got past the passcode machine, but he wondered if it would have helped him with the computer. The group returned from where they had just come, and this time, when entering the stadium rather than just the plain flooring on the arena floor. Out from underneath, a large portal had been lifted and placed there. "It looks absolutely fine," Dell complained. "Looks like I carried this thing for no reason after all." As the group walked closer to the portal, Quinn was beginning to hear his heartbeat louder, and he wasn't the only one. "What's wrong, boy?" Leo said. "It's nothing," he replied, but it was a lie. After throwing up the food pill, it was clear to him that his body had changed after the last evolution. He could eat food, and now he couldn't. So what about other changes? Before, when walking into the sun, he would lose half his stats. What if this time he just burnt to ashes? Vortin, looking at Quinn, had realized the same thing. Hey, do you know if it's daytime or nighttime on the other end of this thing? I haven't seen the sun for ages. The sun should still be out for a couple of hours. Faye replied, but when you two get back, I suggest you rest. Quinn gulped after hearing those words. Oh, will you relax? The system said, don't worry, the sun won't kill you. Really? Yes, why would I lie to you, although it will have a different effect on you? Like what? Well, just wait and see. Chapter 98 back again. With the system telling him he had nothing to worry about, his heart started to settle down a bit. It had no reason to lie to him, other than if he was playing some type of sick joke, but then why would it do that? Although knowing the creator's personality through the videos alone, it was something he would totally do. The group stepped into the portal and exited out from the other end. As they opened their eyes, they could see they were in the training hall. The same one where Peter had pushed Quinn. Since they were indoors, no system message had appeared telling him his defects. But I thought the portal would send us to a random location. Quinn asked. That's actually only the case with red portals. Faye replied. It's designed that way, so beasts are unable to know the location. Also, with a planet that has been undiscovered, which is usually the case with red portals, it's hard to pinpoint exact coordinates like we can on Earth. Vortin, you head back to class. There's some checks I still need to do on Quinn, Haley said. They did as they were told. Quinn followed Haley along while Vortin decided to head back to his dorm room. Belle, you're free to go, and Leo, you come with me. We will report this back to Nathan, telling him the mission is a success, and I'm guessing he will decide what to do with the True Dream body. The students were currently in the middle of their classes. Layla was sitting in her seat, hitting her pen constantly on her table. She moved it up and down in the middle with her fingers. It was something she would do whenever she had something on her mind. She was hoping one of her connections would be able to get Quinn out of there, but he had to be taken to a relatively unknown planet. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, and all that anger was being directed at Peter. As soon as classes were over and she entered the hallway, she could hear all the other students mumbling away. Did you hear? Apparently, the missing students are back. Are you sure? Yeah. I saw Vortin walking back to the dorms, and Professor Dell was cheering out loudly in the hallway. Vortin's back, but what about Quinn? Layla thought. She immediately rushed over to the boys' dorm to see if the rumors she heard were true, but before knocking on the dorm room, she hesitated. The last time she had done something like this, she was strangled by that psycho Vortin. But she needed to know. She wanted to know if Quinn was safe. She gathered her courage and knocked at the door. A few seconds later, and the last person she wanted to see had opened it. It was Vortin. Look, let me just get a chase. Where is Quinn? Vortin smiled as soon as he saw who was at the door. He's at the doctor's office. Thank you, she said as she rushed off. Wait, Vortin shouted. As she turned around, she could still see a huge grin on his face. You're not the only one that knows anymore, he said. What do you mean? Layla asked. Vortin then started to walk over to her slowly. The grin on his face was beginning to get creepier by the second. I'm saying you're no longer special and not needed by him anymore, because I know. Layla turned and continued to run, and as she did, she had the final say. I guess you're still a crazy boy. She ran and ran until eventually, she had finally reached the doctor's office. When she entered the room, she noticed that Haley wasn't there, but when she looked at each of the beds, she had finally found him. Quinn, she said surprised. For a moment, she had to look him up and down a couple of times. His jawline, his clear skin, and just something about him was pulling her towards him. What's going on? She said. Are you using some type of charm spell on me? She had read enough vampire novels to know what was happening. Although she was fascinated with Quinn because of what he was, she had never thought he looked handsome, but for some reason, her mind was now running wild with thoughts. Can you turn this thing off? Quinn said in his head. Of course, but I thought you would like this? The system replied. Of course I do, but if it's like this, she won't really like me. It's just cause of the system. Charmstat deactivated. Suddenly, Layla no longer had the urge. But still looking at Quinn now, he looked different from before, and she had to admit he was now on the same level as Vortin with his looks. Although she didn't like Vortin, she knew a pretty boy when she saw one. Are you okay? What happened? She asked. While no one else was in the office, Quinn proceeded to tell Layla everything that happened in the portal world. I'm sorry, I wasn't there. She said. I said I would help you, but I couldn't. Hey, don't worry about it, Quinn replied. I wasn't expecting anyone to jump in after me. That's practically suicide. He did. Layla mumbled just quite enough, so Quinn couldn't understand what she said. For some reason, she felt like Vortin had one-upped her on the loyalty scale. Just remember, if you need any blood, you can call me. You don't have to really on Vortin, she said as she rushed off out of the doctor's office. It was a nice feeling to have people worry about him. For the first time in his life, Quinn truly felt like he had friends. It was a strange feeling he had never felt before. No one had looked out for him when he was hurt. In the past, when he came back home, all beaten up, he always had entered an empty room. No one asked if he was okay or how he was doing. But ever since getting the system, things were different. After Haley had given Quinn the all-okay to leave the office, he finally returned to his dorm room. Inside, Vortin was busy playing on a handheld device. Hey man, is everything all okay? Vortin asked. They didn't find out you were a... He looked around the room before finishing the last words. Vampire, did they? Yeah, everything was fine. She said she could find nothing wrong with me, and my blood levels were normal. So she sent me back. As the two of them were talking away, a beep sound was heard from the door, indicating that it had been unlocked. The door opened, and in came Peter. Chapter 99, same teams. With no one to talk to, or no one to help him out of the situation he was in, Peter would often go out for walks on his own around the campus. His mind was filled with regret and Layla's words. In a way, he felt like he should have been punished for what he had done, yet Layla had just left him there. He felt even less significant than before. He wasn't even worth being hit. After walking around school a couple of times, he decided to head back to his dorm room, as usual. But as he entered, he had nearly experienced the shock of his life. The two people who he had thought had gone missing possibly dead on another planet, were in the room. Guys, Peter started to say with his eyes watering up. Get out. Vortin shouted as he pointed at the door. What? I said get out. Vortin shouted again. If you don't get out, Peter, I don't know what I will do to you. But this is my room as well. He cried. I don't care. Ask them to change rooms, but you are not staying here. Peter then looked to Quinn for help, hoping he would say something. But Quinn just turned his head away as his body was shaking. He didn't like what was happening, but it needed to be done. What Peter had done was unforgivable. He and Vortin could have died, and if he really was still a level 1, he would have been killed by the first Radiclaw he had seen. Peter stood there, still in shock. He didn't know what to do. As soon as he saw the two of them, he was hoping everything would go back to how it was. Before everything had happened, he wanted to tell them how sorry he was, but they wouldn't even let him speak. Vortin then went to his desk and grabbed a book, chucking it towards Peter, hitting the wall and falling onto the ground. The next one is going for your face if you don't leave, said Vortin. Peter, please just go, Quinn said. When Quinn spoke those words, it finally hit him. There was no redemption for him, no matter what he said or did, or even why. They had made up their minds. He was no longer their friend. He opened the door and closed it behind him as he left. Looking around, there was nowhere left to go. It was already nighttime, it was nearly curfew, so he couldn't go outside, and all the other parts of the building would be closed now. With nowhere to go and no one to rely on, he stayed in the dorm room hallway, curled up into a ball on the ground, and cried himself to sleep. The next day, when the two woke up in their beds, they could hear a commotion going on outside. As they opened the door, they could see a group had gathered just outside their room, and they were all circling around something. What happened to him? Look, the floor's wet underneath. Did he cry himself to sleep outside? I thought I could hear something last night. A boy from the group then knelt down and grabbed Peter by the hair, lifting his head off the ground and waking him up. Hey, so it was you that was waking me up in the middle of the night, the boy said. Before deciding to do anything, the boy looked at Peter's watch and noticed he was a level 1. The boy himself was only a level 2. So he took this chance to show everyone he wasn't at the bottom of the food chain. If you're going to stay out here like a dog, then you need to learn to shut up, he said as he lifted his hand and slapped Peter across the face. Peter was already defeated at this point. He didn't care what happened to him. Or a few slaps. This pain was nothing. What was the point of fighting back? He would only get hurt more. The only people who had bothered to help him in the past, he had tried to kill them. This is what Peter wanted. He wanted to be punished for his actions. As the boy lifted his hand to slap Peter again, he felt something grab his wrist. Then before the boy could even turn his head, he saw a fist right in front of his eyes. The punch was so powerful the sound of his jaw cracking could be heard, and the boy immediately was knocked out and collapsed to the ground. As Peter looked up through his watery vision, he could see Quinn standing there with a look of anger on his face. I didn't do that for you, he said. If anyone was treating someone like a piece of SHT like that, I would have done the same. Without even looking at Peter, Quinn walked off with Vortin and headed to the canteen. Hey, who was that? I'm not sure, but he was kind of hot. I don't remember seeing him in school, do you? No, me either. After breakfast, the group was to go to their homeroom class for the usual morning lesson before heading to combat classes. Everyone sat in their usual seats, which meant that Vortin and Quinn were sat next to each other with Peter on the side. They really did come back. I heard they got pushed into a portal by some second year. It's amazing they managed to survive. All of the students were talking about the two who had gone missing for a few days. It wasn't the talk around the school, but was talked about frequently in Dell's class since the students belonged to their class. Dell had finally entered the room with a smile on his face as he prepared to give an announcement to the whole class. Good morning, everyone. Now that everything is back to normal again, I am proud to announce that your first portal outing date has been confirmed and will now be moved to next week. So please prepare yourselves as best you can. Oh, and remember to practice with your teammates. The same teams that were registered before will be used for this outing. This meant that Peter would be on the same team as the others. Chapter 100 Dreamland. Outside somewhere in the world, there was a city named Dreamland. The place was condensed, packed with buildings and skyscrapers everywhere, and it didn't seem to be a place of open land that could be seen. A large wall also stood, surrounding it around 100 meters high. On top of the walls were several turrets and mechs standing guard day and night patrolling for any danger. Because of these things, Dreamland was considered one of the safest cities to live in. But it came at a cost. Security was a significant issue, and so was habitable land on Earth. After the war, many of the old cities were obliterated and destroyed. Too much damage had been done. Parts of land gone missing, blown into small pieces, too small for humans to live on. This was what caused the humans to create shelters on other planets. It was a lot cheaper than living on Earth, and often many travelers from different associations and families would live there protecting the place. But planet Earth would always be home to many, and it was hard for them to leave. They hated the fact if they lived on another planet, they might have to live in fear of beasts attacking them at any moment. Because of this, the few places left on Earth were only for the very top. There were only two ways to live in the city of Dreamland: to either be really rich or to become a part of the True Dream family, swearing absolute loyalty to the leader and doing whatever is asked. In the center of the city, there was a skyscraper bigger than any of the others around it. The whole building had been made of glathrium, the hardest material known in space. Inside, on the very top floor, was a bald-headed man in a nicely fitted suit was sitting down in his large armchair at his desk. His name was Jack Truedream, the leader of one of the Big Four families. Just then, a female wearing business attire had entered the room. Sir, there has been a report that one of our family members have died. What rank was the traveler? Jack asked. Rank D, sir. Once students had left the academy, they were able to become travelers and either work for a faction, family, or as a freelancer. The world government issued these travelers with a rank depending on the difficulty of tasks they can complete. At some point, power levels didn't matter too much on the outside. The attribute that high-level beast gear gave you was much more useful. It was more important how you use your ability in conjunction with the beast gear. When starting out as a traveler, everyone started as a rank F. The more tasks you would complete, the more points you would be awarded. Usually, it would take a couple years between each rank to level up. Ranks went from F all the way to A+. Because of the way the system worked, it was always hard to gauge an F's ability, but the strong would usually move quickly through the ranks. Therefore, travelers seemed to care less for power level and often looked at rank instead. Our rank Ds die often out in missions. Why the need to tell me? Jack asked. Well, sir, this one was received to us from one of the military bases, and it was one of our hopefuls named Ian. Jack sat there and thought about it for a while. It was usual for him to get reports from other families and organizations when they found the dead bodies of his family. They wanted to do anything to get on his good side. What troubled him, though, was the person who had actually died. To give a person an ability that he had taken away, he had to touch them and meet them in person. The low-level abilities, he usually didn't remember too much. But he remembered giving Ian quite a handy ability. He had also only taken a year to go from a rank F to a rank D and was hoping for better things for him in the future. Send me the report. I'd like to take a look. The female then clicked a device in her hand, and in an instant, a holographic display appeared in front of Jack. He used his hands to navigate through the pages and quickly read through the information. There were also some pictures attached of Ian's body. Well, what a bad way to die, Ian said as he looked at the picture of his body cut in half. But then he spotted something that interested him and started to zoom in, right on Ian's neck. Alexa, bring me up the report of 2 years ago on Danny Fletchman. Report has been found, his computer system said as it brought up another file. He looked through them once again and noticed that another family member had the same mark on his neck. Usually, Jack wouldn't remember details like this, but Danny Fletchman was a level 8 user and was a B rank traveler. One of the strongest men that the True Dream had in their family. When he had died, it had come to a shock to him, and no one knew who or what had done it. Could these two cases be linked somehow? He thought. Apparently, they coincidentally came across Ian when they out looking for 2 students. I don't know much of the details. Do you know what military base they are from? The worker then placed her hand on her glasses, and images could be seen in the reflection. Words and articles started scrolling past her eyes. Military base 2, sir. Perhaps it's time I pay a visit to them. It has been a while, and I could find out more information. In the meantime, find out what you can about Ian's last mission. Jack then stood up from his chair and closed his eyes. Inside of him, he could see around 10 little flames swirling around his stomach, each of them looking slightly different from the others. It looks like I'm running low on abilities again. I guess it will also be a good chance to stock up as well. Chapter 101 Leo as question. With morning lessons over and done with, it was time for combat lessons to start. Layla had come over with Aaron by her side to Quinn. They weren't exactly friends now, as the two didn't really talk much. In fact, Aaron didn't really say much at all to anyone. However, over the last few days after searching for Peter together, they started to hang around each other more often. They had also practiced as a team together beforehand, and for the first time, Aaron had actually called Layla by her name. These were all huge steps forward in Layla's eyes, and before they knew it, the two of them would naturally just be around each other. The 3 of them headed off to the Beast Weapons class, while Vorden had already left for the Elemental class. Now, sitting in the room, all alone was Peter, just blankly staring at the wall in front of him. Even his fake friends were no longer talking to him at the canteen. Earl and his gang had been avoiding him ever since Aaron had threatened them. They had also already gotten their use out of him and no longer needed him anymore. Peter continued to sit there and think back at all the stupid things he had done. If only he had done this differently. Why did he decide not to ask for help? Why did he agree to help them at the time? It had hurt back then and felt like he was going through hell, but right now, he couldn't even remember what the pain felt like. As all these thoughts ran through his head, and he started clenching his hair in his hands. Every time a stupid memory came up, he would pull his hair, try to forget it, as if he was pulling the memories out of his head. Why? Peter shouted as he pulled out a clump of hair. Why? He said again, pulling out another. His hands were now filled with parts of his hair. He could feel something running down from the top of his head. He had pulled so hard and so much hair that blood was starting to drip from his scalp. As Quinn was just about to leave the second-year building ahead to the Beast Weapons Hall, he paused for a second, right by the exit. This whole time he had been back. Not once had he set foot outside in the sun, and for the first time, he would be doing so now. He had asked the AI system repeatedly what the effects were, but he would never tell him. Calm down, Quinn. You already know you won't die, so what's the worst that could happen? Hey, Quinn, is everything okay? Layla asked, noticing he had stopped just by the exit. Yeah, I'm fine, Quinn said as he took a step forward. Bang! Instantly the effect of the sun had hit him. The rays affected him more than ever, and a pounding feeling was heard in his head. He stumbled a little, but soon caught himself. It took him a few moments, but he finally adjusted to the sudden feeling. You're being hit by direct sunlight. All stats will be reduced by 70%. 70? Are you freaking kidding me? Quinn shouted in his head. Now calm down. The system replied. I thought you would act like this, so I didn't want to say anything. At least I had a chance of fighting in the sun before. I thought if I increased my stats to at least 20, suck a few people here and there, I would be like a normal person in the sun. What am I meant to do now? Well, honestly, I never really had this problem before. Back at the kingdom, we had plenty of items that stopped the sun form affecting us. Just take a look at your inventory. That ring you were looking at is given to the weakest of our men. The system was suddenly revealing a lot more information due to the outburst. Whenever Quinn would ask the system who he was, or if there were other vampires out there, he would ignore him and pretend he never heard. However, Quinn needed to deal with one problem at a time, and right now. And the sun was an urgent one. Look, I can see you're depressed. The system said. How about this? He then opened up Quinn's menu and went to show him the Shadow Skills tab. Out of the 10 skills, 3 had been unlocked, but 7 were still grayed out. You just want to be able to fight in the sun, right? You see the skill named Shadow Void? It cost a total of 20 skill points. I would recommend you unlock that next. The skill allows you to create your own space of shadows, blocking it from not only the sun, but outside viewers as well. Although it wasn't a permanent solution to Quinn's problem, it was a solution. While Quinn struggled to walk, Layla quickly came over and pulled out an umbrella over his head. She had kept it on her at all times for situations like these. Vorden, looks like I'm needed more than you after all. Layla thought. Suddenly, Quinn started to feel a lot better. The sunlight is being blocked. All stats will return to normal. Do you guys have to be lovey-dovey in front of me? Erin said as she saw the two walking under the umbrella. We're not a couple. He's just feeling sick. The sun gives him heat, stroke easily. What a wimp, Erin said as she walked off ahead. Quinn didn't know why, but Erin's words always seemed to sting a bit more compared to when others said it to him. The three of them had finally arrived at the Marshall Hall and no longer needed the umbrella. Once again, as he entered, he started to feel his heart beating faster than ever. He was nervous. The reason was simple. It was because of Leo. For some reason, Leo had asked that the next time the two of them met, to speak to him. Although Leo did say that he wouldn't hurt him, those words didn't exactly reassure him. The classes had begun as normal, with Leo asking the students to warm up by sparring with each other. But once again, Leo had asked Layla to step away as Leo wanted to be his opponent. Leo then took Quinn to the corner of the room away from the others, making sure they couldn't hear their conversation. Thank you for saving me in the portal world, Quinn said first, hoping to get on his good side by sucking up to him. I was just doing my job. What happened to your gauntlets? There's no energy emitting from your hand. They broke in the portal world. I'm sorry. I'll pay you back. Leo raised his hand, telling Quinn to stop speaking. Boy, there is no need. Those weren't expensive in the first place. But for something to break some beast gear, you must have fought against some beast then. Quinn started to laugh nervously. He wasn't prepared for this and didn't really know how to answer. Oh no, one of those rat beasts jumped at me, and all I did was lift my hand, trying to protect myself. The beast wouldn't let go, so I had no choice but to take them off and run. I see, Leo said as he stood there silent for a moment. Quinn, do you know they say when someone goes blind their sense of hearing improves? Now let me be the first to tell you that is all a myth. However, my ability does improve my senses, and I can hear your heart beating ever so loudly. Quinn gulped as he was afraid of what the old man might say next. Do you also know, they say that when a person is lying their heartbeat changes ever so slightly and they start to sweat more. Now Quinn, the truth is I don't care what you are, but I only have one question to ask you. Are you on humanity's side? Chapter 102, The Marketplace. Quinn started to think about the question Leo had given him. It was clear that he knew something about him through his ability, and it was why he had asked the question in the first place. But rather than out him to his higher-ups, or try to deal with him himself, he was asking a simple question. If I answer this wrong, will he attack me? Or maybe even turn me in? Quinn thought. But judging by what he had said earlier, if Quinn was to lie, he would be able to tell. Everything about the current human society made Quinn feel sick to his very core. It wasn't just the government or the military, but the originals as well. When his parents were fighting in the war, why did they choose to reveal themselves towards the end and only then share their powers then? Why did the military design this caste system that put everyone into categories? In a way, he wanted to see the current society fail. But did he want everyone to die? No. Did he want the Dalki to win the war? No, he didn't want that either. Now that he thought about it more, he was in an interesting position. He couldn't exactly call himself human anymore. If they found out what he was, would they accept him over to their side? Probably not. Humans were scared of the unknown. But two people already had done. Layla and Vorden didn't know what he was, and didn't stop speaking to him or treated him any differently. Quinn knew what his answer was. I'm on my own side, but there are people I want to protect on this side too. For a second, Leo just stood there silently. He continually looked at the purple flame burning around Quinn, and then he turned around and walked off without saying a word. I guess my answer was okay then, Quinn said as he let out a huge puff of air. He felt like any second now, he was about to have a nervous breakdown. Get yourself a new weapon, kid, Leo shouted. You're going to need it for the portal expedition, and my offer still stands. Feel free to have a duel with me whenever you wish. The combat classes had ended, and Quinn didn't end up doing much in today's session. With no equipment of his own, he had to pick something else from the wall. But when he tried using a sword, he realized how much practice you needed before he could even become half decent at the thing. Using his fist just felt natural to him, especially since nearly all of his skills required him to use his hands. This meant more than anything that he needed a new set of gauntlets. Before leaving the Marshall Hall, he asked to borrow the umbrella Layla had and decided to head to the library for the rest of the afternoon. There he would be able to use the public computers. On the way there, he opened up his system to check on a few things. Firstly, it was his crystal inventory. Right now, he had 16 basic tier crystals, 1 intermediate tier crystal, and 1 advanced tier crystal. The system shop had a set of intermediate gauntlets for him, and all he needed for them was 3 intermediate crystals. There was no requirement of what type. Then there was the advanced tier crystal that could only be used as a ring. He finally sat down on the computer and went onto the marketplace. He started his search to see what was the standard price for selling crystals. Right now, the basic tier crystals were useless to him. Before logging in to access the weapons section of the marketplace, he was to input his military ID number. This wasn't recorded by the system, but just proved that he was allowed to buy and sell weapons. The marketplace promised to scramble all information once confirmed and entered. If people were able to tell who was selling these items, then it would cause a big problem for the seller. Enter username ID. I'll just use the same one as my game. Blood Evolver. A standard basic tier crystal could be sold for 100 credits, an intermediate crystal 1,000, and an advanced crystal 10,000 credits. Right now, he was sitting on a gold mine. Some crystals sold for more, depending on the rarity of them, or what they could be turned into. Next, he started to search for gauntlets. There weren't as many online compared to other weapons, but there was still plenty to choose from. He noticed that once he moved up from basic tier weapons, the description of each item would be quite significant. It would tell you what crystal was used to create the weapon, suggesting that it might have some other type of attribute other than strength. For example, some might have fire resistance, if made from a beast from a hot planet, or ice resistant for one from a cold one. Let me give you a tip. The system said, place your hand on the computer and use your inspect skill while looking at the item. Quinn did as the system asked and was surprised by the result. Suddenly, he could see the stats of all the weapons that were in front of him. But how? Quinn asked. The system you're using itself is like a computer system. It scans the information the computer tells it and puts it into numbers for you to easily understand. Although it will only be able to tell you if the beast crystal is in the database. I tried my best to put as many different beasts as I could in there, but there may be some I have never seen. Quinn continued to search through the items, but something surprised him. None of them gave the same number of stats like the one in the shop. At most, the strength they provided was +5, while the intermediate weapon in his system was +6. Sure, it was only one strength of difference, but right now, that was a lot. The second thing was the price of the gauntlets. They ranged from anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000 credits. This was because it included the cost of finding all the crystals and also paying for someone to forge the weapon together. Even the basic tier weapons cost were around 2,000 or so credits. Quinn didn't even bother looking at any advanced tier weapons. He sat there and started to think for a while about what to do and what was the best option. Without a doubt, he needed a weapon before next week. In the end, he finally decided the best thing to do was to sell the advanced tier crystal. Even though he was able to use it to create a ring that protected him from the sun, he needed 10 of the things, and not only that, it required a specific beast from a red portal planet, a place where students just weren't allowed to go whenever they wanted. It was basically useless to him right now, and the credits would be more helpful. Quinn then started to search for a deathbat crystal on the marketplace, hoping to figure out what price he could sell it at. But to his surprise, there wasn't a single deathbat crystal up for sale. With no clue how much to sell it for, Quinn decided to look at other specific crystals and priced it around there. He did the base price of the crystal plus around 2,000 extra credits, selling it for 12,000 in total. And done. Now all I need to do is wait for it to be sold. Then I can buy 2 intermediate crystals and get the weapon for the system. Ding. It had only been a few seconds, but someone had already put up the money for the crystal. With it came a portal confirmation number. All Quinn needed to do was go to the storage unit and place the crystal in the teleporter. Once entering the confirmation number, it would teleport the item to the user on the other end. Somewhere in a dark room, a kid with his hair gelled backwards that looked to be a similar age to Quinn was on his computer browsing the marketplace. Come on, what happened to that guy? I paid him good money to get that crystal for me. I only need one more. The kid said. He never expected to find anything on the marketplace, but every day he would check just to make sure. However, the exact crystal he was looking for turned up. No way. And only for 12,000 credits. I have to buy this straight away. With no hesitation, the boy swiped his card on the computer next to him, confirming the purchase of the item. A man then appeared from the shadows and was stood next to the boy. Young master, if your father finds out you didn't get the crystals through your own effort, he will be furious. Every one of us had to go hunt those beasts as a trial for ourselves. The man said, My father thought he could stop me. Now with the ring, I can finally leave this place. He then looked at the computer screen once again. Thank you, Blood Evolver. You have made my day. If I ever meet you in real life, I promise I will repay this debt. Chapter 103, Buying from the Shop. After sending away the advanced tier crystal, it didn't take long for Quinn to receive the money. The portal delivery box confirmed that the item was real with a scan, and then with a flash, it was sent. At the same time, Quinn's watch made a ding sound. He looked at his watch, and 12,030 credits were all his. Never in his life did he think he would be able to acquire this type of money. His original plan was to obtain the Earth ability from a school. Then he would work hard and possibly be able to upgrade his ability to a power level of 3. After he could join a hunting faction and become a traveler, killing basic beasts and selling their cores. But even then, he would have had to kill 120 basic beasts to make the amount of money he had today. Before doing anything else, Quinn immediately put up the 16 basic Radiclaw crystals for sale. These didn't take long to sell either. There were always people and companies looking to buy them. If the beast crystals couldn't be used to make a weapon, they would be used as an energy source instead, powering up vehicles, lights, engines, and all sorts. Now the total amount of credits was 13,630 credits. He looked at the number again and again, and a smile couldn't stop appearing on his face. Logging back onto the marketplace, Quinn was now searching for 2 intermediate crystals. The shop stated that the gauntlets he was after didn't need any specific type, so he went ahead and purchased the 2 cheapest ones he could find at 1,000 each. It hurt him seeing his credits go down so suddenly, but this is what needed to be done. There's a need to spend money before one can make money. The better equipment would allow him to hunt stronger beasts and earn more money. Before heading back to the storage room to obtain his crystals, Quinn decided to search the marketplace a bit more to see if there was anything useful. He also looked at the items in his shop, but they all required specific beast crystals that were nearly impossible to find on the marketplace. That's when he realized the items in his shop seemed to be quite rare. Even when searching for a weapon or piece of armor similar, there were no matches found for these type of items. After searching and searching, he decided to fork out a load of money on a pair of black boots. He purposely chose a design that didn't look too fancy, but also gave him the best stats. That way, if others saw the equipment, they wouldn't think anything of it and wondered where Quinn was able to get the money from. After spending 8,000 on the boots, he now only had 3,630 credits remaining. As he walked over to the storage room, he couldn't help but have a skip in his step. Finally, he had arrived and entered the combination for both of his orders, and a few seconds later, a couple of large boxes had appeared in front of him. Quickly, he lifted the 2 boxes and started to rush off towards his dorm room. As he entered the room, he was surprised to see Vorden wasn't there, nor was Peter sitting outside. Although he was too happy to wonder what had happened to them, he placed both of the boxes down and immediately ripped into them. Inspect. Intermediate black horned wolf boots. Agility +4. Defense +2. When boots are active, can increase the user's speed by 10% for 30 seconds. If hit while active, speed will return to normal. The boots were solid black in color, while the top of them that covered above his ankles were slightly pointed to imitate the ears of a wolf. Other than that, they just looked like regular boots, which were perfect. Quinn could have bought cheaper boots, but what interested him about these were they had their very own active skill in them as well. Quinn had heard of such items having skills, but usually that was the case with higher tier equipment. It was quite rare for a piece of intermediate beast equipment to have an active skill. which was why the item was priced at the higher end. Next were the 2 intermediate crystals he had bought. He held each of them in his hand, and a message had appeared. Would you like to store intermediate beast crystals, too, in your inventory? After selecting yes, the 2 crystals started to disappear and suddenly vanished out of the palm of his hands. Now, when he accessed the shop, the gauntlets that he was looking for were no longer grayed out. After selecting the item, a final message appeared. Would you like to create the best standard intermediate gauntlets? Cost 3 intermediate crystal. The naming of the item was a bit strange, but that still wouldn't put Quinn off. He was the only one that could see the name of the things anyway. After selecting yes, an image was inserted into his head. He could see the 3 crystals he had obtained in a black, empty space. Each of the crystals started to slowly move towards the center of the room, as if they were being attracted by something. Finally, when the 3 crystals touched, a large white light formed in his mind. Then when the bright light dimmed down, all that was left were the grayish silver gauntlets. They didn't look like anything special. In fact, it was hard to tell that they had even been made from beast cores in the first place, but Quinn didn't mind. All he cared for were the stat points. When he opened his eyes and looked down, the gauntlets were there placed in his hand. Wow, this is amazing. It really did just form itself and appear out of nowhere. Inspect. Best standard intermediate beast gauntlets. Strength plus 6. Defense plus 4. When using the skills blood swipe and blood spray attacks will be 5% stronger. He then immediately went into the shop again, but this time something strange happened. He scrolled and looked, but the item he had just created was no longer there. If you're looking for the gauntlets, they are already in your hands. The system said, sounding half confused. I know that. Quinn replied. It's just I thought I could make another one. If I bought 3 more intermediate crystals, then I could sell it online and make my money back. Unfortunately, each item in the system is a one-time item. The system answered. Once you have created it once, the item may never be created again. Suddenly, Quinn felt a little depressed. The reason he'd spent his money so freely on the boots was because he hoped he would be able to make another pair of gauntlets and sell them online. Let me show you something cool. The system said, open up your dimensional portal using your shadow skill and place both of the boots and gauntlets in there. I'm not going to lose them, am I? Quinn asked. Just trust me. Quinn had already done a few tests with the dimensional portal, so he was sure that he would be able to get the equipment back. He did as told and opened up a small shadow portal, putting both of the items in. Weapons and armor detected in dimensional space. New skill shadow equip acquired. Shadow Akip. What does it do? Quinn asked. Just try it out and see. Shadow Akip activata. As soon as the skill was active, clouds of shadow surrounded his hands and feet. He could feel something forming on top of his hands and legs. Then when the shadow clouds disappeared, the equipment he had put in the portal were now on him. It was like an instant equip. With his Quinn didn't need to wear all his equipment beforehand. He could even hide high levels of equipment from the eyes of others and be ready for a fight anytime. With the new equipment all set up and ready, Quinn was itching to test it out, and he knew the perfect place to test it. The VR game. Unknown to Quinn, though, the last time he played, he had caused quite a stir. People claimed he was a hack player, and one person in particular had been checking the game every day for Quinn to log in. Logan was waiting for him. This time when he logged in, he was going to find out just who this blood evolver was. Chapter 104 Combination Skills. It was getting late that day, and soon it would be nighttime. Tomorrow was the weekend, so once again the students would be free to do what they want as long as they didn't leave the city for a couple of days. With this, Quinn decided to head back to his dorm and call it night. When he arrived at the halls of the dorm, he could see Peter sitting up against their room wall asleep. As Quinn walked past and entered the room, he took a glance at Peter, who looked to be bruised and beaten. Not only that, but he seemed to have a couple of clumps of hair missing from his head. Is he still getting bullied? I wonder who ordered him to do it? Maybe Layla will know more. Quinn thought as he entered the room. He still hadn't forgiven Peter, and truthfully he never thought he could. But still, he wanted to stop incidents like this from happening in the future. To do that, he needed to find out who was at the top giving out the orders. When Quinn entered the room, Vorden was already inside on his bed relaxing. Hey, Quinn said. Where have you been? I came back earlier, but no one was here. Oh, that, Vorden replied. Actually, something has been really bugging me about the whole Peter situation. It's obvious someone asked him to do it, right? And they'd already set up a fall guy to take the blame. But when I tried to find out what happened to that person today, not a single person knew. Everyone just kept saying the punishment was dealt with by Duke since he's a second year. Why don't you go to the first year students he was hanging around with before? Maybe they know something. Yeah, I was planning to do that on the weekend, but we need to be careful. If my hunch is right, this would be involving someone at least at the sergeant level. Do you want me to come with you? Quinn asked. No, I think it's best if we investigate separately. Plus, if I get caught, it's harder for them to touch me. While for you, it's a different matter completely until we get level on your watch sorted. I know, Quinn said as he snapped his fingers. Why don't you ask Layla? Apparently, when we left, they ran into those friends of Peter's. The face Vorden was currently making wasn't one of happiness, but it wasn't one of disgust either. It was as if he was trying to put on a smile, but his body was fighting against him. Quinn, you do know me and or don't get on, right? Well, you know you're going to have to. We have the expedition next week. Use this as a chance to repair your friendship. I've already lost one friend. Don't make me pick and chose between you two, Vorden. Vorden then grabbed the pillow by his side and threw it at Quinn's face. All right, man, I'll try. The two of them then laid down in their bed to get some sleep. You're not actually going to try to become friends with her, are you? Ratton asked. Just kill her, and then he doesn't have to choose. We're his best friend, done, deal end off. Go away and let me sleep. With Vorden investigating the situation, that meant Quinn would be free to head to the VR room tomorrow. But before he shut his eyes to go sleep, he decided to have a look at the tutorial video he had unlocked when reaching level 10. Once again, the blonde man appeared, who looked like he was in some type of dojo. Congratulations on reaching level 10. Now, in this video, no new skills will be learnt, but instead, we will be creating our own. By now, you should have also unlocked the skill Blood Spray and learnt the skill Hammer Strike. Although blood spray can be used on multiple targets, to do the most damage, it's best if you're actually touching your opponent. What's even better is if you combine the two skills together. The blonde man then got into a fighting stance once again. He repeated all the steps of the hammer strike, as usual, but right at the end when the force came out, he performed the blood spray attack. Rather than spreading out like it usually did, it was compact and came out together in a thick line. In the video, a loud sound could be heard. Whoops, the blonde man said. Looks like I will have to make some repairs to the dojo. This move I call hammer spray. Now be careful, because this attack will not only use up your stamina, but will drain you of your blood as well. Also, the hammer spray takes slightly longer to prepare, so it may not be optimal in all situations. But the point is, if you activate blood spray with a punch in your fist, it will be several times stronger. After watching and analyzing the video carefully, Quinn finally shut his eyes to get some sleep. The next day, when they awoke, Quinn was greeted with his usual message. Avoid sunlight for 8 hours, 5 EXP gained. 10 out of 100 EXP. Quinn was glad that after he evolved, his EXP points seemed to have reset. He hated to think how hard it would be to level up if his EXP kept doubling up all the time. In fact, it seemed like an impossible task in the future. As the two woke up, they started getting ready. That's when Quinn noticed something as Vorden changed out of his uniform. Hey Vorden, don't you use a beast weapon or anything? Quinn asked. When leaving the city, just in case of an attack, people usually carry their weapons with them. Quinn was keeping his in the dimensional void for the time being. Actually, most of the time, I prefer to use elemental abilities, which kind of just get in the way with weapons. Although you're right, I should probably pick one just in case I get an ability where it would be useful. Well, if you could, is there anything you're best at or anything you would want? I guess I always thought daggers were cool, but it might be a while before I can make my own beast weapon. My family don't like to send me money because they think I should earn everything myself. Vorden said, laughing. Quinn had actually planned to create a new weapon for both Vorden and Layla. They had both helped him so much, and he wanted to return the favor. Layla had helped him learn so much about vampires, while Vorden had even come in after him to the portal world. There was also the worry that other vampires or something else might come to attack them. If that was the case, they might go after those around him, so there was no harm in making them stronger. As the two exited out of the room, they noticed that Peter was still up against the wall, sitting there. You can go in the room and sleep there while we are out. Just make sure when we come back in, you're out of there, Vorden said. The two continued to walk off until they finally split ways. Quinn headed to the VR room, while Vorden started to head outside the building. That was nice of you, Ratton said. We can't become worse than what we were trying to get rid of, Vorden replied. Speaking of getting rid of people, here's your chance. Standing just outside the gate was Aaron and Layla. Both of them were no longer in a military uniform. They were dressed in their casual clothes for the weekend. Layla wore a stunning red dress, while Aaron was a bit more elegant. It was white in color with flowers on the bottom, and on top of her head, she was wearing a large summer hat to block out the sun. As soon as Layla spotted Vorden, she turned her head away. Nearly every interaction with him so far while Quinn was away wasn't a good one. But then she started to hear the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer. No, he couldn't be. Is he walking over to us? She thought. Come on, Vorden, you're doing this for Quinn. You can do it, he thought. Now the two of them were within grabbing distance, once again. For the first time, Vorden was stuttering in his life. But it wasn't because he was scared, it was because of Ratton yelling all sorts of things in his head. I need your help, he blurted out. The look on Layla's face was one she had never made before. Chapter 105 Blood Evolver returns. As Quinn headed down to the VR room, he was suddenly feeling exited. Now, with his credits, he could spend as much time in the game as he wanted and practice the skills until he got tired of it. Eventually, though, the best thing would be for Quinn to purchase a capsule of his own. That way, he could play the game in his room and connect to players not just within the military camps. But just remembering the price of the thing made him shudder. 100,000 credits. To purchase the item, he would need 10 advanced tier crystals or 100 intermediate tier crystals. To get that sort of money would take him years. It was a shame Quinn thought that he couldn't use the system to reproduce the weapons again and again. If so, he would be able to have an unlimited supply of money. But it did make him wonder if there was any way he could exploit the system in some way. Then the idea hit him. He already knew all the items needed to make the weapons. In fact, the gauntlets he was using now only required 3 beads crystals. As long as he gave the items and his original gauntlets as a reference, a blacksmith should be able to reverse engineer and create something similar. Let's see, 3,000 coins for the materials, then 2,000 for the blacksmith fee. That's 5,000 coins in total. Then if I sell on the marketplace for 8,000 coins, that would be 3,000 in profit. Quinn quickly realized the problem with his plan. The profit earned from selling the weapons would not be enough to cover the cost of making the weapons again. He would either himself need a large amount of capital in the first place, or find an investor who was interested in the idea. I would be careful if I was you, the system said in a serious tone, different from its usual self. Do you remember when you searched for the items from a shop, how none of them appeared on the marketplace? Well, there's a reason for that, which is these weapons and the blueprints that were used to create them don't belong to humans. Quinn didn't need to hear him say the name. He knew what the system was talking about. They belong to the vampires. I'm afraid if you start mass-producing these items and start selling them to the public, they will start looking for you. So I guess that rules out that plan. I never said you couldn't. I just said to be careful. For now, perhaps Quinn would have to put his money-making plan on hold. He still wasn't strong enough to deal with other humans. Never mind vampires, and besides, he didn't have an investor or someone who could back him up anyway. Finally, Quinn had arrived at the VR center and went up to the counter. This time he deposited 100 credits into his account, so he would have 10 hours of playing time. He wasn't planning to play it at once, but this way he wouldn't be interrupted. It was early in the morning, so there wasn't a lot of people around yet. Besides, people didn't usually want to spend their weekends playing a game all day. Quinn made sure he was in between his own capsule and another. He looked around, and then when no one was looking, opened up his dimensional void to pull out his boots and gauntlets. He placed them both in the scanner, and when the process was finished, proceeded to put them away back in his dimensional void again. Welcome, Bloodevolver. After entering the pod, he was transported to the blank white space. The first thing Quinn tried to do was look at the ability list. He scrolled and scrolled, but it was as he thought. The game system had no such ability. He tried to use his shadow abilities, just as he had done his blood abilities. However, this time they did not work. Can the system not record mutant cells? Is that why the abilities have to be manually inputted? Quinn didn't really know the answer to his own question, and to be honest, not many people would, so there was no need for him to worry about it for now. All he did know was his blood abilities worked in the game, while his shadow abilities did not. But then, there was also his new ability days that wasn't part of the shadow. Before going into matchmaking, Quinn wanted to make sure he had a hang of the new tutorial he had been shown. In the game, it didn't take up any of his health, and he could use his blood skills as many times as he wanted. He watched the video one more time as a reference before trying to perform the skill himself. On his first try, he was quite successful. Unlike the other skills, there really wasn't much to learn. It was more a sense of timing, activating his blood spray skill at the same time as his hammer strike. Quinn then started to just throw out a few regular punches while activating blood spray, only at the point where his arms would fully extend. Sometimes he would activate it too early, causing his arms to jerk back a little, and sometimes he was successful. The most important thing was to get the hang of the timing, activating it at that right point. After practicing non-stop for around 30 minutes, his success rate of using blood spray with his punches was around 80%. With hammer strike, he could get it nearly 100% of the time, but like the system had said, it took longer to charge up the hammer strike when combining it with the blood spray. Time to test out these new skills. Searching for same level opponents. The fact that Quinn was a level 1 still meant he was able to search for opponents at the same level as himself. To start off with, he just wanted some easy picking to test out his skills, but the second he started to search, his player ID had gone online. "Oh, I haven't seen him in a while," Nate said. "I thought he might have stopped playing the game." Ever since Nate had fought against the Bloodevolver, he had gained an interest in the opponent, mainly because of the type of ability he had. Now spectating Bloodevolver. But he wasn't the only one keeping an eye on him. So was Logan. The forum post had long since died down, but it still bugged Logan that there could be someone taking advantage of the game he helped create. He had set up the system, so it would ping him as soon as the Bloodevolver went online. Then he could spectate his games without having the need to be on his friends list. "Come on, let's see how you do it," Logan said as he waited for the Bloodevolver to find his next game. There was a part of him that was hoping the videos were fake. He needed to see it with his own eyes whether or not someone was able to break the system. After searching for a minute or so, a suitable opponent was found. Each player's avatars had entered the game. Equipped with his new boots and gauntlets, his stats were as high as they ever had been. Strength 16 plus 6. Stamina 15. Agility 16 plus 4. Charm 5. The countdown began, and the game had started. In an instant, Quinn rushed forward. With his new boots, he felt lighter and faster than ever. These things are amazing. The first fight was simply a test of everything he could do. While running, he decided to activate the skill from the boots, increasing his speed even further for another 30 seconds. He would run from side to side. His opponent found it nearly impossible to keep up with him. It was like looking at a fly. 1 second he could keep track of it, then suddenly it would change direction, and he would lose it. The user then prepared the water held in his hand, and started to form a long blade with it. After running around the room for 30 seconds, the boots had finally worn off, and now Quinn was heading straight for his opponent. 5-minute cooldown before wind run can be used again. He's really going to just run straight at me? The user thought, and when Quinn was close enough, he swung his water blade across right at him. "I probably won't die if that thing hits me, but time to try it out." He looked at the user in the eye, and for the first time, activated his new skill. Daze has been activated. Your opponent has been stunned. Suddenly a fear had set into the water user's mind. A shiver was sent down his spine, and when he tried to move his hand, there was no response. Quinn then threw out his fist, and right when it landed on the user's stomach, he activated his blood spray at the same time. The user was sent flying through the air, and a trail of splattered blood followed, leaving from Quinn's gauntlets. Winner Bloodevolver. It had only taken a single punch with blood spray to finish his opponent off. "Looks like all my vampire abilities work here, not just my blood skills." Well, that's good to know. Logan had watched the whole thing. He couldn't believe it. It was true the user could use some type of red energy. It didn't look like any ability he knew off, but that wasn't the problem. Logan had even checked beforehand and confirmed that Quinn had selected no ability before entering the game. He quickly started typing rapidly onto his keyboard and searched for any information he could pull. Most of the information was scrambled for the user's safety. He couldn't find out who was in the pod, but he could find out other information. After typing away for a few minutes, he finally found the information he needed. User, Bloodevolver, login location. Military base 2. "Oh, will you look at that? Seems like we're quite close after all," Logan said, smiling at his computer screen. Chapter 106 No experience points. Up in the stands, Nate found it hard to keep his mouth closed after what he had just seen. The last time the two of them fought each other, Nate had come out as the winner, but now looking at the new Bloodevolver, he seemed so much stronger compared to before. But how? We only fought a couple of weeks ago. Was he holding back? Or did he really just get that much stronger in a short amount of time? The speed, the strength, and even that weird red energy seemed stronger than before. Nate knew he also still had the flash step and the hammer strike in his arsenal of skills. The more he watched this person, the more excited he started to get. After Quinn won his first match, he had a feeling that something was missing, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Wait a minute. Where's my EXP? Before, when defeating an opponent, the system would reward him half the amount of EXP he would get for defeating a person on the outside. But this time, there was nothing. Just to make sure, Quinn quickly searched for another level 1 opponent. His opponent was found, and in this match, he wasted no time in dealing with the enemy. He dashed forward and cast Daze, stunning his opponent, and at the moment used Flash Step to get behind them, then finishing the opponent off with another standard blood punch. Bloodevolver victory. Again, though, there was no system message for EXP. System, what's the meaning of this? Seriously, do you only like speaking to me when you have a problem? The system replied. Anyway, this was obvious, don't you think? You evolved, you're now a level 10, the experience needed was reset. In simple terms, your opponent was too weak for you, so the system didn't reward you any EXP. Quinn cursed underneath his breath. Every time he seemed to be getting somewhere and felt like he could really make progression, the system seemed to get in his way. Quinn then used the search function again, this time searching for level 2 ability users. He was quickly put in another match again. This time, when fighting, Quinn wanted to still finish the match fairly quickly, but was a little more cautious. He threw out a barrage of blood swipes to distract the opponent. Then running behind his attacks, he would use Flash Step to appear behind them just in case they were able to block the initial attack. However, that wasn't needed. His blood swipe skill was now a level 2, and because his opponent had never seen such a thing before, he tried to hit it with his basic tier sword. As soon as the two had made an impact, his sword had shattered. The blood swipes hit his body and sent him to the ground. He wasn't dead yet, but badly hurt. It only took one more hit to finish him off. Blood Evolver victory. But still, there were no experience points. Frustrated by the situation, even more, Quinn went to quick search for his opponent, hoping it would find him a random user of a higher level that would at least give him some experience. As he used his inspect skill on his new opponent, he was now going up against a level 4 user with an earth ability. He was wearing a full set of basic tiered equipment head to toe. Before the match had started, Quinn failed to notice the stand around him were getting filled. More people were starting to watch his games. After the last two opponents he faced had 2 quick losses, they decided to inspect his next few games. The users were able to search for the previous opponent they played against, and then inspect their matches. They had also invited their friends, saying they had met a person with a strange ability they had never seen before, explaining how they lost in only a few seconds. Their friends had invited their friends, and now the stands were filled with around 20 different people inspecting Quinn's next match. It seems others are starting to notice you as well, Nate said as he heard them talking. Hey, so do you think this is that hacker? Oh yeah, I remember seeing a forum post about it a few days ago on their website. A user who used red energy. I thought it was fake though. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Quinn, looking at his opponent, was wondering just how strong he might be. It was the first time he was fighting against a user who wore beast equipment over his whole body, which meant he would have added stats from the equipment. Actually, there was another person. The system said, but you kind of ate him. Hearing those words from the system reminded him of when he was in the Bloodsucker mode, and suddenly he felt a little strange. Thanks for reminding me just before a fight. 3. The match had finally begun. This time though, Quinn wasn't going to charge in on the get-go. He moved forward until he was within the 5-meter range of blood swipe and swung a single attack out as a tester. The earth user then stomped his foot on the ground, and a solid wall of earth rose from the floor blocking the attack. However, the blood swipe was powerful and managed to chip away at the wall. Seeing this, the user stomped several times more, adding to the first wall, making it even thicker. Eventually, the red lines disappeared, and the attack was stopped. While Quinn was thinking how to make his next attack and how to make it go through, a hard earth spear had risen from behind and stabbed Quinn in the back, causing him to stumble to the floor. 46/55 HP. Damn, that's what I get for staying still. But before Quinn could even fully recover, several more spears had risen from the ground, coming straight for him. He rolled and dodged the first few before getting back up on his feet. This match was going to be harder than he initially thought. Chapter 107 Bloodhammer. Unlike the other users Quinn fought with before this one, he was more skilled. It reminded him of Vorden a bit, creative and skillful when using his abilities, even though he wasn't the highest when it came to power level. Wind Walk. Boots activated. Using the boots skill, he was able to increase his speed and avoid all the spears coming towards him from the ground. Wow, he's quite fast, isn't he? Someone from the crowd said. I think it's those boots. They look pretty plain, but they might be at the intermediate tier or even the advanced tier. Although Quinn could finish the match by continually throwing out his blood swipe, he didn't want to win that way. Right now, this was an excellent experience for a battle in the real world, where he would have to be careful of losing his health. One annoying little fly, the earth user shouted. He then lifted both hands together to create 2 long walls that went past Quinn. As he brought his hands together, the walls moved with it. Now you can only go in one direction. With no other options, Quinn had no choice but to run straight ahead, but he had a plan. Skill days. Days failed, user not stunned. Oh crap. Right now, Quinn's charm stat points were incredibly low, meaning it was unlikely for it to work against stronger opponents. The higher they were, the lower the chance it had of working. But so far it had worked every single time. Part of this was due to Quinn's luck, but the other part was the fact that they were only level 1s and level 2s he was facing before. Just then the earth user created another wall in front of him, then started to punch the wall several times. The parts of the wall came flying out at incredible speed. The attacks were too fast for Quinn to react in time. The pieces of rock ended up hitting him one by one and sending him back. 42/55 HP. 38/55 HP. 34/55 HP. But Quinn gritted his teeth and managed to not fall over. As the next set of rocks came towards him, he flash stepped in front of them all, causing them to miss and go behind him. I guess even with his strange red powers, he just can't beat a high level. Well, did you see the other guy's strength? It must be because he's using a full set of beast gear. No way a normal level 4 user could hit a solid wall like that and cause those rocks to go flying at that speed. Well, I guess it was all just hype in the end. But one person thought differently. Come on, Blood Evolver, I could beat this guy in my sleep. I know you're better than this. Nate said. You know, your lack of experience when it comes to fighting ability users is really starting to show. The system said. Shut up, I know, Quinn said. Screw this. Quinn had enough. He started charging forward once again. The earth user created another wall in front of him and had done the same attack as last time, punching the wall, causing rocks to fly out. Let's see what's stronger. Matching each rock, Quinn started to throw out a blood swipe for every rock thrown at him. Quinn's blood swipe was clearly stronger, destroying the rocks and continuing to go forward. Seeing this, the Earth user had no choice. He jumped back and had put up rows and rows of walls between the two of them, creating a barrier around 3 meters thick. Screw your wall. Quinn then started to make the motion of the hammer strike, bringing the energy up from his toes to the top of his body. That's it. That's the strike that was used against me, Nate said excitedly. But I don't think it's going to be enough. Why not use some more of the red stuff to weaken the walls first? Or break the walls to your side, which are thin, and get behind him. Nate was worried. Although it was clear the Blood-Evolver was strong, it was also clear he was an amateur when it came to fighting. Take this, Blood Hammer, Quinn screamed as he let out the hammer strike, and at just the right moment activated his blood spray at the same time. The 22 strength, with the additional 5%, and now combining the hammer strike with blood spray, created a powerful attack. As his fist hit the wall, it instantly started to shatter and burst into pieces all over the arena. Fragments of the wall came flying out into the stadium. Some of the audience members dodged, avoiding them, while others just stood there. Idiots, you do remember this is a game, right? The attacks from there can't hurt us. The strike continued to blast through the wall. This was something the Earth user had never expected. I'll just have to take the hit then, he said, but as the attack hit him, he instantly burst into blue particles, ending the game. Victory, Blood-Evolver. At that moment, though, Quinn had collapsed to the floor, combining all of the attacks, and using his skills from before had taken up all his stamina. Soon after, though, he was transported back to his own lobby space where his strength would be returned. The whole crowd was silenced. They didn't know what to say or what they had just seen. During the entire match, the Earth user hadn't been hit once. Even though he was wearing a full set of beast gear, he still lost. This would have increased his defense, as well as overall strength, yet it was useless in front of the single attack. Just who was that guy? Someone said. I told you he was strange, and did you see his weird red ability? Yeah, I've never seen anything like that, did you? Hey, can you upload that and put on the forum? Maybe an original has managed to get their ability in the game somehow. While the others were exited and chatting away, Nate's whole body was shaking. He had goosebumps and shivers running all over his body after seeing the last attack. That attack, it wasn't the same one he used against me. It looked the same, but was different. He knew that if he had taken that attack head-on like he did the hammer strike last time, half of his health wouldn't have gone down. It would have been the whole thing, and he would have been just as dead as the user in front of him. So you really did get stronger. Well, I would just have to get even stronger then. Back inside the lobby, all of his stat points had been returned, so Quinn was no longer on the floor gasping for air like he had just sprinted a whole marathon. The Blood Hammer strike skill took up a lot more stamina than I thought. Although he had performed the Blood Hammer skill several times in the lobby, while in the lobby the game did not take away any of his strength. Only during matches would his normal stats be used, and it was the first time he had used Hammer Strike in a game. But a smile was suddenly on Quinn's face. User defeated, 25 EXP gained. 40 out of 100 EXP points. Finally, after defeating a level 4 ability user, the system had rewarded him for his hard work. Although Quinn wasn't physically tired, the last match had taken a lot out of him mentally. It was hard to go into the match after the match when it was that intense. It was fine when a matches only lasted a few seconds, but it was different when it was like that. So he decided for today he would take a break. He exited from the pod, and to his surprise, what looked like a little boy was standing in front of him. Hello, Blood-Evolver, Logan said. Looks like we finally meet. Chapter 108, Logan and Android. The boy standing in front of Quinn was quite short. His height only reached to about Quinn's chest, and he had dark green colored hair that had a middle parting going down both sides. But what was most noticeable about him was the enormous black bags he had under his eyes. But hearing the words come out of Logan's mouth took a while for Quinn to process. He looked around to see if there was anyone else around the two of them, but the few users who were using pods were either still inside or several rows away. So how did you do it? Logan asked. He immediately walked past and shoved Quinn to the side and started inspecting the pod he was just using. He placed his hand on top of the machine and closed his eyes. Doesn't look like any modifications have been made to the pod. Then how? Logan mumbled. Then when looking at Quinn, he spotted that his watch had the number 1 displayed. What? That's impossible though. You use such powerful skills in the game. You should at least be a level 5. I could have sworn you weren't original. In return, Quinn looked at his watch and saw the number 8 on it. The highest level the watch was able to display. At that moment, just looking at the number struck fear into his heart, and he froze. Should I make a run for it? If I do, will he attack me right here and now? I had so much trouble with the level 4 in the game, there's no way I can go against a level 8 right now. And he might be even higher than that, Quinn thought. Although the watches displayed up to a power level of 8, there were actually people considered stronger than that. The system was based only on the abilities the military could get a hold of, meaning the highest power level they were able to hand out was that of 8. But even within their own ranks and between other originals, some powers went beyond. So by default, if a user mutant cells were beyond, it would display 8. You're not thinking of running, are you? Because I haven't finished questioning you. I need to know how. How did you manage to break my game? Logan shouted as he started to go off into a rant. I can understand if you hacked into the system, but this. I just don't understand. I need to understand. Logan started getting closer to Quinn as he rambled like a madman. Why do I seem to attract the strangest people? Quinn thought. If you don't want to answer me here, then you can go with me to my dorm room. There's plenty of time, and nobody will be able to see us. As Logan touched Quinn's hand to pull him over, something strange had happened. Ability detected. Alterations to the system are trying to be made. Alterations have been blocked. But the strangest thing was, Quinn wasn't the only one who was seeing these messages. Logan was too. He animatedly let go and touched his hand as if he had been scratched by something. This was it. Before Quinn could do anything, his cover had been blown. Maybe Layla and Vorden understood, but there was no way a stranger would understand. Would he have to fight to the death to keep his identity a secret? Or would he use his shadow cloak skill to hide and run away? Maybe he could run to one of the portals and live his life on another planet. Are you a robot? Logan shouted. Quinn replied, confused. You have a system. My ability confirmed it. For the first time as well, I was rejected by a computer. You must be a robot with a powerful master and ability that goes above mine. Did Richard Eno create you? That would also explain the game. My system and the level 1 on your watch. A robot can't have any MC points, and those attacks must be programmed into your artificial brain. Looking at little Logan now, he just seemed like an excited little kid. He didn't seem threatening at all, but this did put Quinn in an awkward situation. Logan knew he had some type of system, and somehow, he confirmed it with his ability. Was it better off telling him the truth, or coming up with some other type of lie? Quinn thought hard, but he could come up with nothing that would explain why he could use certain abilities in the game without reviling everything. He took a deep breath. I'm not a robot, but for some reason one day, I woke up and had this system ability. Maybe it was a gift from a god who knows. The skills you saw are some of the things I could do, Quinn replied. Is it an ability similar to mine then? I wonder who did this to you. Maybe they turned you into an android. Android technology has come a long way, but the use of AI systems inserted into their brain was banned. They were afraid that an ability user may come along who could take control of them all and use it against the army. But this is the first time I've seen an android as powerful as yourself. Quinn looked at Logan, who now wouldn't stop staring at him. Then a thought came to his mind. He had been looking for someone who would be able to help him out with the watch. It was clear that Logan knew a lot about machinery, and something like changing the number displayed on the watch would be easy for him. Can you keep this a secret? Quinn replied. Maybe the two of us can work together, perhaps find who did this to me. There are a few things I need help with. Logan was genuinely fascinated by this ability. He had never seen anything like it before, and the curiosity was already driving him mad. Maybe it was even an original who was able to pass on his ability, like a computer system, rather than training the person. But then why did the watch not display his level? This was why Logan could only assume Quinn was a type of android that didn't have MC points and didn't even realize it himself. Of course, it would also give me the chance to study you. Logan then put out his hand. The name's Logan. Quinn, he replied as the two shook hands. Ability detected. Alterations to the system are trying to be made. Alterations have been blocked. Logan then pulled his hand away again, almost immediately. That does not feel good. Maybe we avoid touching each other for now. Agreed. Quinn laughed nervously. Just what was the system? And who created it? Quinn thought. The only person he could think of was the man in the video. Quinn seemed to recall the blonde man, stating that his experiment was a success, which would suggest that other vampires like himself didn't have a system. So then why did his parents have the book in the first place? Chapter 109 Logan the Tinker. Just outside the school at the front gates, the unexpected had just occurred. Layla was struggling to stand as she had just heard certain words come out of Vorden's mouth. First, I'm gonna have to ask you to step back a bit. Layla said, and no touchy from you. I keep telling you let's just kill this bitch right here right now, Ratton said. Look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Vorden said, come on. Quinn said that you could help me. Every time she looked at Vorden, she remembered when she was being chocked by him. It wasn't a good feeling, and her senses were still tingling all over the place every time he approached. If it wasn't for the fact that Aaron was standing by her side, she would have run the second she saw him coming over. But she had to admit one thing. Vorden, for whatever crazy reason he had, seemed to genuinely care for Quinn. The two of them soon would also be going to the portal expedition together. It was important they tried their best to make up while they could. She let out a big breath and gave in. Fine, what is it? Actually, it's related to Peter. Quinn said that you two had spoken to him while we were away on the other planet. Did you manage to get anything out of him? No, I could tell that we wouldn't. It seemed like he was scared of something, even with Aaron there threatening him, which meant whatever he was scared of was a bigger problem than Aaron. Layla said, well, I don't think we can get anything out of Peter right now. He's broken more than ever. Perhaps the only thing that's holding him on is this last bit of hope. I was hoping by outcasting him like this he would go back to the person who put him up to this. Wait, what? Layla said, you mean you're doing this whole thing on purpose? I understand he needs to be punished, but don't you think you're going a little too far? Too far? Vorden replied. You don't even know what really happened there. Were you nearly killed by a blood-sucking beast, abandoned in a world full of monsters everywhere? Blood-sucking beasts? So did Quinn really? Just then Layla stopped herself as she turned to look at Aaron by her side. She had gotten so heated in the conversation, she had forgotten all about her. But as the two looked at Aaron, she was bent over looking at a trail of ants going across the floor. It seemed like she was disinterested in the whole conversation the two were having. Anyway, if you can't get anything out of Peter, then try a first-year student named Earl. He was the one hanging around Peter before this whole thing started, and it looked like the two were going to meet the day we met up with both of them. Earl, got it. Thanks for the help, Vorden said. Oh, before I go, Aaron, do you mind if I touch your hand? Aaron stood up on the ground and looked at Vorden for a few seconds. When they had first met, she had refused. She simply believed he was someone weak and below her. But she quickly came to realize that Vorden was one of the strongest people in her class. I hope you use it well, Aaron said as she held out her hand. With her ability copied, Vorden then turned away and walked off. He's a tough one, Aaron shouted. Even with my threats, he didn't reveal anything. Don't worry, Vorden said, smiling back. I know someone who taught me a few things. Vorden continued to walk off back into school. Hey Ratton, looks like I might have a job for you soon. As Layla saw Vorden walk off, she still had one thought. Crazy boy. Quinn and Logan were in a different part of the school building than Quinn was usually in. They were in the dorm room area, but were in the floor directly above where Quinn would usually stay and sleep. The fact that they were in the same dorm room building meant that the two of them were in the same year, despite the fact that Logan looked like a middle school student. We're here, Logan said. As Quinn looked around, he noticed there were fewer doors and were further spaced apart. What is this place? Quinn asked. It's the VIP dorms. If your family make a generous donation to the military before coming here, then you get access to one of these rooms. As he opened the door, Quinn was amazed by the sight in front of his eyes. The room was twice the size of the one he shared with 3 people, and there was only a single bed. But that wasn't what amazed him. The whole room was filled with what Quinn could only call junk. There were piles of scrap metal everywhere, and lying across the entire place were gadgets, little spaceships, controllers, and all sorts. There were two things that stood out in the room. One of them was a large human-sized tube that seemed to be hooked up to a computer and had large tube-like wires hanging from the top, and right next to that was a VR pod. One of the ones that cost 100,000 credits to buy. Logan's family was a rare case. Usually when getting rich, it was to do with power. Those with strong abilities earned money by hunting or from protecting others. However, Logan's family were one of the very few who managed to amass its wealth by making the VR game and selling the equipment. There were a few other families that were able to do the same, such as companies that built the spaceships and certain beast weapons. But a lot of them still worked under the umbrella of an original family. Logan then went to sit into his mechanical chair that instantly sprouted a load of arms and started giving him a massage. So what did you want help with? Logan asked. Quinn was in a strange situation. Layla and Vorden knew he was a vampire but didn't know about the system, while Logan knew about the system but didn't know he was a vampire. However, because of what Logan knew, it seemed more comfortable to explain the system side rather than the vampire side. I was wondering if you would be able to hack the watch for me. Allow it to display a number of whatever I want. I should be able to do that easily for you. But first you need to tell me why. Quinn hesitated for a little bit. He had only just met Logan. He seemed like a nice guy off initial impression, but every killer or crazy person out there showed a nice face to someone at some point. I think I know what you're thinking. You're worried that if the government find out about your ability, they're going to try to take you away and dissect you. Logan said, well, trust me, I won't be telling the government, the military, or anyone anything. I'll be honest with you, Quinn. I don't care about you. I care about the person who is able to input a system into your mind. To find that person, I need you to lead him to me. And before that happens, I'm not letting anyone take you away. Logan's words sounded a little scary and harsh to Quinn, but at least they were honest. Unlike other people where he couldn't tell what they were thinking, Logan was being completely transparent. As you know, my system has a certain set of skills that allowed to use in the game. But the thing is, I actually do have an ability. Quinn then lifted the shadow and started to move into a giant hand and used it to wave at Logan. If it wasn't for the fact that Logan was sitting down, he would have fallen down from the shock. What is that? So you really aren't original? Not quite. It was an ability the system already had, but for some reason, as you can see, Quinn said, pointing at his watch. It doesn't register on the watch. 1,000 thoughts started a race through Logan's mind of why it might be. He wasn't interested too much in the ability itself. That stuff didn't interest him, but he wanted to know the reason why. The watch is a simple fix, but if I do this for you, I was wondering if you could do me a favor, Logan said, looking at the wire tube machine. Quinn started to sweat, looking at the thing. If he wasn't going to be experimented on by the military, he felt like Logan would be doing it anyway. Don't look at me like that. The machine there is for the game. Will you let me put your shadow abilities in the game? Logan asked. Chapter 1, 10, Upgrading the Shadow. Quinn decided to think long and hard about Logan's suggestion. For him to be able to use his ability, he needed to follow and use Vorden's plan. This way, others wouldn't go after him. But before even that, he needed everyone to think his ability was just like everyone else. But the problem was the shadow ability was linked to the vampires. Most likely, only vampires were able to learn this type of ability, and if that was to be added to the game, it would cause a big problem. I'm sorry. Quinn said, this ability, it's not mine. Do you know what happened to me recently? What happened to you? Logan said, puzzled. Quinn went on to explain how recently he had gone to a red portal planet along with his friend Vorden. And while there, he had discovered the ability book and learned the skill only to have the book disappear. I see. Logan said, I guess I have been in my room too much. I didn't really focus on stuff going on outside. So because of your plan with your friend, you need the ability on the watch. Logan sat down, thinking for a while. The robotic hands had finished massaging him, and now, behind him, coffee was being made from another machine. Well, how about this? You still help me get the ability into the game, but I won't make the ability public. If you want, you can come up here and play the game on a private server and practice using your abilities in the game. You won't have anyone to fight against, but you can still use your abilities freely while no one is looking. I get to study you a bit more, and you get to practice. It's a win-win. As soon as Logan finished talking, he turned around and started to take a sip of his coffee, letting out a sigh of relief. Ah, the perfect temperature. So what do you think? There seemed to be no downside if Quinn was to agree. The only thing was he would feel a bit like a lab rat being looked at all the time, but this solved a few of his problems. Before going to the portal expedition, Quinn wanted to unlock the Shadow Void. That way, if he was in a dangerous situation and in the sun, he would at least have a fighting chance to survive. I say go for it. The system said, if you want to unlock the Shadow skill I told you about earlier, you'll need to level up your current Shadow abilities to gain skill points. Then you can unlock the Shadow Void. This is perfect for you. Although Quinn found the system annoying, it was clear that it was on his side, trying its best to help out the user. All right, Logan, I'll do it. Logan jumped out of his chair and had a smile on his face. Great, let's get to work. Following Logan's instructions, Quinn did as asked and got into the strange large glass test tube. Once he was inside, the glass lowered, and now he was trapped in a small space. At the same time, Logan rushed over to his computer and started typing away. Can you hear me all okay, Quinn? Yeah, a little nervous. This is going to hurt. Relax, you big baby, Logan said. Now, all I need you to do is slowly use your abilities while in the tube. Quinn proceeded to use his abilities as instructed. He started off with the shadow control and started to move it around in the tube. Numbers on the computer screen were scrolling about like crazy, but as Quinn looked over, it seemed like Logan wasn't typing anything. Right now, his eyes were closed and his hand was the only thing on the computer. Is it his ability? Quinn thought. There were some strange instances where Logan had mentioned a few things. He had touched the capsule Quinn was using and said it wasn't hacked, and then when the two of them touched hands, he also could see the system messages. And now, there was this. The test continued with Quinn demonstrating his shadow cloak skill, and also his shadow equip skill. The only thing he didn't show while in the test tube was his dimensional space. And we're done, Logan said, rubbing his eyes. He then got out from his chair and started to walk over to his bed. All the data has been uploaded to that VR capsule by your side. If you want to practice, then go ahead. I'm going to take a nap. I'm beat. After lying down on his bed, a few seconds later, he was fast asleep, smiling away. He's quite trusting to be able to sleep in a room while you're still here. The system said, if only you knew what you really were, I wonder if you would feel so safe. Looks like you're starting to talk to me now, even when I don't ask you questions, Quinn replied. After entering the VR capsule and entering the game, Quinn was transported to the white space. Just as Logan had said, there was no way for him to start a match as right now he was in some type of beta version of the game. When looking at the list of abilities, his shadow abilities had shown as one of the options. After selecting the shadow ability, Quinn immediately got to trying a few things. He used his shadow skills as usual, and while in the game, his MC points didn't go down. What Quinn wanted to do was find out ways he could combine his blood skills along with his shadow control skill. Over the next week, Quinn continued to come to Logan's room every day to practice using his shadow ability. Logan had long done as he promised and had hacked into the watch. Now all Quinn had to do was tap the watch fast 3 times to switch between level 1 and level 6. This was all at Quinn's request because he planned to still keep it a secret just for a little while longer. Then finally, after a week had passed, he had achieved what he had set out to do. His shadow control skill was now level 2, and so was his shadow equip skill. Now the shadow equip took only a second to fit his beast gear on. As the system had said, every time he leveled up the shadow skill, Quinn had gained skill points. For each level up, he had obtained 10 skill points he could use on the shadow tab. Right now, 4 of the shadow skills out of the 10 had been unlocked. Shadow control level 2. Shadow cloak level 1. Dimensional void. Shadow equip level 2. Looking at the other skills, Quinn was tempted to unlock some of the others, especially since one of the skills required 50 points to unlock called Shadow Eater. But in the end, he decided to go with the system suggestion and purchase the Shadow Void skill for 20 points. Shadow Void level 1 unlocked. Shadow Void. The ability to create a space surrounded by shadows in a specific area. The space created will last a total of 1 hour. 50 MC points to cast the skill. 50 points, that's half of my MC. But there was no use complaining. In the end, it was a skill meant to help him use his vampire abilities. While using his vampire abilities, his MC points would slowly start to restore. Then he could switch back to shadow abilities. While in the VR game, Quinn tried to test out the new skill. However, when he tried using it, nothing had happened. Oh, I guess Logan needs to program any new skills into the game as well. As he exited the capsule, he released it would be the last time he would see the thing in a while. Because tomorrow was finally the day where the first years were to go out on their first portal outing.